Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Pirate, I will become stronger by checking in on the plot island. Chapter 41. After finishing everything, Sha Chen turned to look at Buggy and others behind him. Hey, if you don't leave, Marine will be here later. Are you sure you want to drag your feet here? However, Buggy ignored Sha Chen's words and instead stood up and looked at him angrily. You, how dare you let the Straw Hat Boy go? Do you know that I almost killed him just now? Hearing Buggy's question, Sha Chen's eyes turned cold, and he appeared next to Buggy the next second. He is my captain. The word, let go, is not appropriate. And even if he doesn't leave, do you think I will let you delay us here? Buggy, you are a bit arrogant. Looking at Sha Chen, Buggy, who appeared in front of him instantly, he couldn't help being startled and took a few steps back. He didn't see clearly how Sha Chen appeared next to him just now, and he couldn't help but feel a little fear in his heart. However, what Arita said next almost frightened him so much that his cerebellum shrank. Bah, Buggy, he seems to be the Demon King Sha Chen. What? Buggy yelled at Arita in horror. That's right, Arita. After eating the slippery fruit, you become more beautiful and your eyes are different. You're flattering. Arita forced a smile and said to Sha Chen. The man in front of her was a man with a bounty of 300 million, which made her a little panicked standing in front of him with a bounty of only 5 million. And there was a reason why she could recognize Sha Chen so quickly. The main reason was that she had never seen anyone more handsome than Sha Chen, especially the demonic appearance on the reward order. Adding a touch of evil charm to the handsomeness. She would often watch this bounty order doing something happy in the dead of night. So even though Sha Chen was not demonized now, that face was already deeply embedded in her mind. Relita couldn't help but blush when she thought of this, and her legs tightened unconsciously. Seeing Arita's blushing face, even Sha Chen had to admit that her current appearance was first-rate among the women he had ever seen. But when he thought of her former appearance as a fat woman, Sha Chen couldn't help but feel disgusted and quickly looked away. Otherwise, you will feel nauseous later. Sha Chen turned his attention to Buggy again. At this time, Buggy had completely lost his previous arrogance. His legs were constantly shaking and he stammered. Demon, Lord Demon King, I spoke too loudly just now. My mouth just doesn't listen to me sometimes. It's all my fault. At this point, Buggy looked hard, raised his palm and slapped half of his face hard. In an instant, half of his face began to swell up at a speed visible to the naked eye. And then he tremblingly said to Sha Chen again, Look, I have already taught it a lesson, so why don't you treat me like a fart? Sha Chen was also stunned when he saw this scene. Buggy God tier is Buggy God tier, so cruel. However, after Buggy's operation, Sha Chen's little anger disappeared immediately. In fact, he didn't intend to do anything to Buggy, he just wanted to scare him. After all, he didn't look at the monk's face but also the Buddha's face. Based on his relationship with the red hair, Sha Chen wouldn't do anything to him. Of course, the premise is that Buggy has not touched his bottom line, otherwise if he really makes him angry, he will still kill him even if the red hair is here, not to mention that the red hair is not here. If the red-haired one dares to stop him, he'll do it together. Lu Bu wouldn't even hesitate to kill his adoptive father, so what's wrong with him beating his uncle? Can he be worse than Lu Bu? Sha Chen said calmly, Since you sincerely regret, then I won't care about it. Bye, Captain Buggy. After saying that, Sha Chen's figure disappeared instantly. After Sha Chen left, Buggy couldn't help but fall to the ground, breathing heavily. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and understood that those who understand current affairs are heroes, otherwise he might have to explain it here. The pirates in front of you, please just surrender and capture me. The sudden sound made Buggy feel anxious again, and he couldn't help but turn his head to look. But when he saw that the place where the sound came from was only a female marine wearing glasses and a group of marine minions behind her, anger suddenly surged into his heart. You all treat Captain Buggy like a soft persimmon, right? Sha Chen is so cowardly because of his strength, why are you? Is it because of your passion? A look of ferocity flashed across Buggy's face, and he stood up and looked at Dasky fiercely. He smiled evilly and said, Little girl, you are so brave, you dare to come to me for trouble. Split into pieces. Buggy decomposed in an instant, and flew towards Dasky with several cold blades in his hands and feet. Dasky looked at the attacks around him with a solemn expression, pulled out sugar from his waist, and neutralized the attacks around him one by one. But Buggy's attacks continued, and gradually she couldn't keep up with the rhythm of the attacks, and her whole body began to be slowly put in a dangerous situation. Suddenly, a small knife appeared in front of her. By the time she reacted, she had no time to resist. She could only watch the small knife rushing towards her, with a trace of despair in her eyes. Looking at the approaching knife, Buggy laughed and said, "Die, Marine girl." But the next moment, his smile froze on his face, because his arm was wrapped in a burst of white smoke and could not move any further. At the same time, Smoker was walking slowly from a distance. The moment he saw Smoker, Buggy's face turned ugly. It's true that he is low in strength, but he has a lot of knowledge. Logia's devil fruit users like Smoker are completely invincible to people like them who have not mastered hockey. Thoughts ran through his mind for a short time before Buggy shouted towards the back. "Boys, Marine Colonel Smoker is here, we kill him." A group of pirate boys behind them shouted, with excitement in their eyes. Full of momentum. On the contrary, Buggy was stunned by the sudden shout. "No, don't interpret it randomly, that's not what I meant." But looking at the eyes of the pirate boys behind him, Buggy suddenly felt that he was indeed a bit useless by leaving like this, and if word spread, it would damage his dignity as Captain Buggy. In this case, Buggy turned his head and looked at Smoker. His eyes gradually became fierce, and then shouted, "Smoker, green mountains will not change, green water will always flow. 30 years in Hedong and 30 years in Hexi, don't bully the middle-aged and poor. If Mr. Japan lets you off the hook today, he will pits you off tomorrow. Little ones, the wind is blowing hard, I'll take the first step." After saying that, Buggy started his buggy tank form and ran behind him at a high speed. Everyone, OMG. All the pirate boys were stunned on the spot. Our general has already escaped before the battle begins. What should we do? Quick. Run. As the voice of a pirate in the crowd came out, it suddenly seemed like some mechanism had been triggered. All the pirates began to rush towards the direction where Buggy was escaping, joining the mighty fleeing army. "We can't let them escape," Dasky yelled. Plop. The sound of an object falling to the ground drew her attention. Then his face was instantly filled with panic. At this time, Smoker fell directly to the ground and couldn't help spitting out a mouthful of blood. Dasky stepped forward quickly. "Colonel, what's wrong with you?" "No, it's okay." Smoker struggled to sit up and waved his hands. "There's no need to chase these pirates. With my current situation, I'm afraid I won't be able to fight anymore. I just managed to hold on for a while to scare them away, which is already the limit." After speaking, Smoker couldn't help coughing a few more times, but no blood came out again. "Colonel, who hurt you like this?" Smoker may have thought of something after hearing Dasky's words. A trace of fear flashed in his eyes, and then he said word by word, "Demon King Sha Chen." "Demon King Sha Chen, is he also on this island?" Dasky couldn't help but asked in confusion. But in a blink of an eye, she thought of the Roranoa she just met. Zoro is a member of the Straw Hat Pirates, and so is the Demon King Sha Chen. It is not surprising here. Smoker didn't answer, but fell into deep thought. Demon King Sha Chen was much more powerful than he thought, and he lost his fighting power with just one move. Thinking of this, Smoker had the urge to scold Marine. Who set the bounty? This is definitely not the kind of strength that a bounty of 300 million can have, right? But it's useless to say this now. This time they Marine were defeated. Then Smoker turned to look at a figure on the house next door and said, "Thanks, Dragon." He was able to return to Rogtown so quickly because of the help of the dragon. Otherwise, it would have taken him a month and a half to return with his seriously injured body. Long laughed lightly. "You're welcome." Then the figure disappeared instantly. Smoker turned to look at the surrounding Marines and said, "Prepare the ship, let's go to the Grand Waterway." But Rogtown is the territory under your jurisdiction, and your injury." Before Dasky could finish her words, Smoker interrupted her with a wave of his hand. "No need to say more. I will submit an application to the headquarters for the general in Rogtown. As for my injuries, I can still recover at sea." After speaking, Smoker looked at the direction Sha Chen left. He murmured, "I must catch you, Demon King Sha Chen." In the sea not far from Rog Town, on the Melee, Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp were currently strangling Luffy's neck, their eyes full of anger. Luffy, do you want to die? Fly over and knock us from the town into the boat. If we weren't so lucky, we would have died countless times. Sanji roared from the side. The three of them were running along the streets of Rog Town just now, when an unknown object flew straight towards them. Under normal circumstances, they can definitely avoid the attack of this unknown object, but if this unknown object is a rubber man who has eaten a rubber fruit, how should they deal with it? So Luffy was very kind, and helped them. He stretched out his hands to hold them all together and let them quickly return to the ship. The problem is that they are not rubber figures, but living flesh and blood. Will they hurt? Okay. Hence the present scene of friendly partnership between crew and captain. Sha Chen sat aside and watched this scene leisurely, drinking coffee from who knows where. This life is a pleasure. A few days later, Nami was wearing a raincoat and looking towards the distant sea in the storm. We are finally approaching the Grand Passage. It's just that the chart is strange. There is a mountain blocking our way. It seems we have to go through the mountain. Huh, idiot. What are you talking about? How can a boat climb a mountain? Zoro replied unceremoniously from the side. But that's how the sea chart is drawn. Nami retorted without any sign of weakness, but her confidence was a bit lacking. It does seem a bit unrealistic that a boat can climb mountains. Bang! Zoro sneered disdainfully again, but before he could speak, a pair of hands grabbed his neck. Miss Nami must be right, how can you question her? Sanji said angrily. You curly cook, what are you doing? Stinky green algae head, you are not allowed to say anything wrong with Ms. Nami. Zoro couldn't stand it anymore and started Sanji directly. Sha Chen on the side picked up the coffee in his hand and took an elegant sip and then said lightly, entering the Great Channel does require climbing a mountain. I don't know when Sha Chen discovered that he had a hobby of drinking coffee. He would take a sip from time to time. It felt really refreshing. The entrance to the Great Channel is on the upside-down mountain in the Red Continent. There is a canal there. Due to the sea currents, there will be a strange scene of the sea currents climbing up the mountain. You'll be found dead. After hearing Sha Chen's words, Nami understood instantly and showed an expression like this. But the next second she looked at Sha Chen doubtfully. Why do you know this? Gulu. Sha Chen took another sip of coffee and said with a calm expression on his face, these are basic common sense. Nami, do you mean to say that I, a navigator, have no knowledge? However, Nami felt that Sha Chen was becoming more and more mysterious at this time. It was also the same when sailing. Sha Chen knew most of the problems very well, and it felt like there was nothing he didn't know. If Sha Chen knew what Nami was thinking now, he would definitely say confidently. You think I watch anime for nothing? At this moment, the ship began to shake, and at the same time, Usopp's voice came over. Nami, the ship is out of control. Huh. Nami was stunned for a moment after hearing Usopp's words, and then hurried to the railing to observe the sea currents under the boat. After a few seconds, Nami shouted loudly, don't worry, just let the boat follow the current. We can't control the boat in such a strong current. If nothing goes wrong with this current, it should take us towards the canal. A confident smile appeared on Nami's face. As long as she knew the principles, there would be no maritime problems that she couldn't solve. After all, she wanted to become the best navigator. Nami, I saw the Red Earth continent. Luffy's excited voice came from above the main pole. Huh, let me see. Nami immediately picked up the telescope and looked into the distance, only to see an extremely huge red mountain appearing in front of her eyes. At this time, Sha Chen also saw the Red Earth continent clearly with his extremely strong strength. Suddenly, Sha Chen's mouth was so big that it seemed like an egg could fit in it. No, he had thought that the Red Earth continent would be huge, but he never thought it would be so big. I can only say that there is a huge difference between what you see in the anime and what you see in reality. The shock is definitely not something you can experience by watching anime. As the distance got closer, everyone saw clearly what the Red Earth continent looked like, and then they all had the same shocked expression on their faces. But the next moment they panicked. Nami, it seems we are going to collide. Usopp yelled in horror. What? Nami instantly picked up the telescope and observed it, and found that the ship was indeed rushing towards the Red Earth continent at a high speed. And due to the influence of sea currents, they now have no ability to control the ship at all. Instantly, a drop of cold sweat flowed from Nami's forehead. Could it be that the chart is wrong? It's impossible. The expression on Nami's face became anxious, and now she didn't know what to do in this situation. At this moment, Sha Chen's voice came from the side, which relieved Nami's tense heart. Don't worry, just follow the current. Nami turned to look at Sha Chen, not doubting the accuracy of what he said, because she knew that Sha Chen had always been a person who made people feel safe. But you still have to ask, as this can increase her sailing experience. Why is it okay to just follow the current? Look, there is a crack in the red Earth continent in the direction we are heading, and that's where the canal is. So the current is not taking us toward the wall, but toward the canal. Huh. After hearing Sha Chen's words, Nami turned her head and looked at that place, and sure enough she found a crack. I can't help but admire Sha Chen even more. With Sha Chen here, it's safe, unlike. Nami looked at the other 4 people on the boat, each with a confused expression on their face. These 4 trash. The seawater is really climbing up the mountain. Zoro looked ahead with a telescope and shouted in shock. He felt a little pain in his face now. Just now he was swearing about how the seawater could climb the mountain, but now in the blink of an eye this scene appeared in front of his eyes. It's actually a bit, but you can't blame him. Who in the right mind would think that seawater can climb mountains? Oh, you're a third-rate swordsman with no knowledge. He's like a local dog, so disgraceful. Sha Chen said disdainfully from the side. I don't know why. Sha Chen wanted to laugh at Zoro when he saw him looking like a local dog, although Sha Chen himself almost had his eyes popping out when he saw the water flowing back. But he didn't show it, he was shocked in his heart. As long as he doesn't show it, no one will know that he is also a local dog. One thing to say is that although Sha Chen already knew about the existence of this situation in advance, he was still shocked when he saw it. He and Zoro actually have similar thoughts. They also think that climbing mountains with seawater is really ridiculous, but many times this kind of thing just exists. It seems that he still hasn't fully adapted to the unreasonableness of the One Piece world. He needs to exercise more in the future, otherwise, he won't be a fool when he goes to Sky Island. You idiot, what qualifications do you have to criticize me? Zoro said unconvinced. Sha Chen's figure disappeared instantly, and the next second his whole face was close to Zoro's. Third-rate swordsman, look directly at me. My skin is at least a few degrees paler than yours. Who are you to see that I'm dark? The Wuda that Zoro was talking about was actually taught to him by Sha Chen. In his previous life, Wuda in his hometown meant. Once when Usopp was making explosives, he accidentally blew himself up, and then his whole face turned black, so Sha Chen said, Usopp, at that time. Unexpectedly, Zoro had learned it secretly and used it on him. It's against Tiangong, right? You drink black coffee every day, what else is it if you don't drink black coffee? Zoro was startled by Sha Chen who suddenly appeared in front of him, but he still said firmly. Question mark. Sha Chen was immediately confused. What I drank had something to do with me. Is it so outrageous? In this case, bang 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 bang. After a while, Sha Chen clapped his hands with satisfaction and walked towards the bow of the ship, while Zoro looked at Sha Chen's back from behind and gritted his teeth. When Laozi becomes stronger, you will be the first to be killed. As soon as he arrived at the bow of the ship, Sha Chen noticed that Nami's face was solemn, and couldn't help but curiously asked, what's wrong? Nami pointed forward with his finger and said, this current can indeed take us to the canal, but now the course is a little off. If we continue to follow this trend, the melee will definitely hit the pillar next to it, and we will be dead by then. Oh, I thought it was a big deal, but it turns out this is it. Nami looked confused. Isn't it a big deal that affects the lives of everyone on the ship? Sha Chen gave Nami a reassuring look, then looked at Luffy and said, Luffy, quickly turn into a balloon and go to the door to cushion it. Luffy, why should I go? Because you can do it. After all, you are the captain of our pirate group, and you must be the most capable one. Only you can handle such a difficult task. Sha Chen made a fuss about Luffy, and Luffy was frightened for a moment. Then the simple-minded man said happily, ha ha ha, I really have to do it. 10 seconds later, when the ship approached the door frame, Sha Chen shouted, Luffy, come on. I am coming. After saying that, Luffy jumped directly to the front door, opened his mouth and a large mouthful of air was sucked into his stomach. In an instant, Luffy's body swelled into a big balloon. At the same time, the Mary also crashed towards the door. Boom! The hull of the ship suddenly leaned against Luffy's belly, and Luffy's face instantly turned red. Sha Chen looked at this scene and nodded with satisfaction. Not to mention, sometimes Luffy is quite useful. With Luffy's buffer, the Mary returned to the right direction, heading straight towards the top of the mountain under the leadership of the ocean current. After playing a great role, Luffy stretched out and returned to the ship. Although he was a little tired, his eyes looked ahead full of excitement. The Great Channel, here I come. Ah-ho! Luffy shouted excitedly. The rest of the people also had expectant smiles on their faces. As long as they climb over this mountain, they can enter the Great Channel. The melee kept rushing upwards driven by the current, and it didn't take long to reach the top of the mountain. Then after a short flight it fell into the canal downstream. When going down, the speed is faster than the previous uphill climb, and the splash is bigger. So it's more exciting. Woo! Suddenly, a strange sound came. Sha Chen couldn't help but look up and looked ahead. He murmured, "Laboon." Apart from Sha Chen, Zoro was the only one on the ship who noticed the sound. He couldn't help but curiously ask the people around him, "Did you hear any sounds?" "It must be the wind," Nami replied confidently. Now she is an experienced navigator and cannot make a fuss about any situation at sea. Otherwise, wouldn't it be embarrassing? Although the sound is indeed a bit strange, it is the Great Channel after all, the most incredible sea area in the world, so a strange wind sound is normal. Is it possible that it's the sound of a whale? Sha Chen said with a half smile. Sha Chen, what are you talking about? How can the sound of a whale be so loud? If it is really the sound of a whale, how loud is this whale? Before Sanji finished speaking, he saw a black mountain in front of him. When he got closer, he realized that it was not a mountain, but a huge whale. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Ah! Everyone on the boat was frightened and panicked. How could there be such a big whale? This is a kind of island whale from West Blue. It can grow to the size of the entire island, so this size is normal. You'll be found dead. Everyone stood on the spot and clapped their hands together. But in a blink of an eye. No, Sha Chen, the problem now is not to calmly say what kind of whale this is, we are going to hit it. Okay, I have a way, Sha Chen said lightly. What can I do? Everyone asked in unison. The solution is. Sha Chen jumped on the goat's head and slashed forward with his right foot. Lanjiao. A slash flew out and hit Laboon's body. Moo. Laboon couldn't help but neigh in pain, then opened his mouth and sucked in all the seawater around him. Of course, Sha Chen and his ship were not immune. Then the entire ship entered Laboon's belly. Death penalty. According to you, the so-called way to avoid crashing is to let us be swallowed. Just tell me if you bumped into me, Sha Chen said, spreading his hands. It's true that I didn't roar. But we're going to be eaten. Isn't this more serious than a collision? Luffy and the others strangled Sha Chen's neck, shook him and shouted. You guys are looking for a fight, right? Bang 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 bang. Hey, people nowadays are not allowed to speak out if they do something wrong. Luffy said mockingly with his face covered in bruises and red spots. That is, the wrong person dares to hit someone first. What do you think is the reason? The world is deteriorating, and people's hearts are not as old as they used to be. Zoro and Sanji also spoke one after another. After hearing this, Sha Chen's fist felt itchy again for some reason. But after thinking about it, I decided to forget it. It's no fun to bully these weaklings all the time. Sha Chen said calmly. Since I dared to be swallowed by a whale like this, it proves that it is absolutely fine. You guys, don't be so jabbering, just wait and see and it will be fine. A few minutes later, after a period of spinning, the Melly landed steadily on a green ocean. The blue sky, the white clouds, the flying birds. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Didn't we get swallowed by a whale? What is this? Nami asked stammering. We are indeed in the belly of the whale now. At some point a cup of coffee appeared in Sha Chen's hand, and he said lightly after taking a sip. Indeed, look, these white clouds and birds don't move. They are all painted on them. Usopp also pointed to the sky and said, "So, the ocean below is stomach acid." Sanji's face changed drastically. "That's right. Who are you?" Just when everyone was still wondering why the whale's belly was like this, an old voice sounded in their ears. After hearing this, everyone's eyes turned towards the direction of the sound. "Wow, a chrysanthemum is coming towards us," Luffy shouted in horror. "HMPH, what a chrysanthemum, so rude. Chrysanthemums can still talk." Luffy became even more frightened. "Idiot, that's obviously a person," Zoro said speechlessly, but he was also a little confused. Why is there an island in the belly of a whale? Thinking like this, Zoro couldn't help but ask him, "Old man, who are you? Why are you in the belly of the whale? Shouldn't you tell someone who you are before you ask someone?" "Ah, that's right. I am Roronoa. I am Kuroka's, the lighthouse keeper of Gemini Point. I am 71 years old, my zodiac sign is Gemini, and my blood type is AB." Clang. Hidao came out of his sheath. "Don't stop me, Lousy is going to chop him." Calm down, calm down." Sanji pulled hard at the side. "You want to take action. I advise you not to do it, because it will kill people," Kuroka said quietly with a cold light in his eyes. Huh, everyone's expressions froze when they heard this. Staring at the old man in front of him, Sanji took a puff from the cigarette in his mouth. While blowing out smoke rings, he said, "Let's see who will die." He didn't believe that an old man in his 70s could have any fighting ability. "What nonsense are you talking about? Isn't it obvious who will die?" "Of course it's me," Kuroka said confidently. "It turns out it's you. By the way, what are you doing here? You probably want to do harm to this whale, right?" When he said this, Kuroka stared at the people opposite him. "Of course not, we were just accidentally eaten by Laboon." Sha Chen stood on the bow of the boat and said, "Oh, I see." Kuroka's nodded, but suddenly he seemed to realize something. He looked at Sha Chen in horror and asked word by word, "Why do you know the name of this whale?" A mysterious smile appeared on Sha Chen's face. "This secret." After hearing this, Kuroka's took a deep look at Sha Chen, but in the end he did not continue to delve deeper into this topic. Instead, he said, "Since you don't have any ill intentions, if you want to go out, you can go out through the iron gate." Kuroka's pointed to an iron door nearby and said, "Hey, there is a door in the whale's belly." Luffy's eyes widened. "By the way, are these paintings all painted by you, old man?" Usopp also asked. "Yes, this is just a little hobby in my spare time as a doctor." "Doctor." Luffy's eyes instantly lit up when he heard this word. He said happily, "Old man Daihua, please come on my ship and be my ship's doctor." "Idiot, what are you talking about? Do you think my 71-year-old body can still join you in your mischief? I may die in the middle of the road." "Ah, that's it. That's such a pity. Okay, no more words, the door is over there, I will take you out." As soon as Kuroka stood up, the entire sea of stomach acid began to shake. Seeing this situation, his eyes narrowed and he immediately jumped into the sea of stomach acid. "Old chrysanthemum," Luffy shouted. "Won't he be corroded by stomach acid?" Sanji said with a cold sweat on his face. Sha Chen said, "No, as a doctor, he is very familiar with his own constitution, so there is no need to worry about this problem." Immediately afterwards, everyone saw Kuroka's emerge from somewhere, then climbed onto the platform he built and gave Laboon a shot of tranquilizer. Not long after the sedative was administered, everyone noticed that the sea of stomach acid that had been shaking began to slowly calm down. Eventually it returned to its previous calm state. What is going on?" Nami asked in horror. "Laboon is hitting the red continent." "Huh." Kuroka's, who swam back after hearing Sha Chen's words, immediately turned his head and stared at him. "Ask that sentence again. How do you know this?" "I told you, old man, this is a secret. I'm actually just an ordinary person who knows a lot of things. For example, I also know certain things about you." The doctor on board One Piece Roger, Mr. Kuroka's. Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. When Sha Chen said these words, not only Kuroka's was shocked, but even his companions behind him were also turned to stone one by one. Then they all shouted loudly, "Ship Doctor of One Piece." Kuroka's once again took a deep look at Sha Chen, as if he wanted to see through him. Sha Chen responded with a faint smile and looked at him as well. After a long time, Kurokas said slowly, "Young man, you do know a lot of things. But I can see that there is no malice in your eyes. In that case, I won't ask so many questions. Because you know I won't tell you even if you ask, it's better not to ask," Sha Chen replied lightly. "Kurokas, do young people dare to save a little more face for me?" At this time, everyone finally recovered from the news that Kurokas was the One Piece ship's doctor. Luffy directly asked excitedly, "Old man Daisy, did you find the One Pieces?" "Yes, that's right," Kurokas nodded. "Do you want me to tell you what's there?" Kurokas teased. "No," Luffy firmly refused. "I will eventually become One Piece with my own abilities and find One Pieces." Seeing the determination on Luffy's face, Kurokas was also infected for a moment, as if he had seen a man who said this with great enthusiasm many years ago. After he came to his senses, a smile appeared on his lips. "Boy, being One Piece is not that easy. Even if it is very likely to cost you your life, don't you regret it?" "I don't care, I will be One Piece." Kurokas looked at Luffy steadily. After a long time. "Ha ha ha, then I wish you good luck." Kurokas wanted to say something else, but suddenly the voices of a man and a woman came from above. "Old man, suffer death." As soon as Kurokas turned his head, he found a cannonball flying towards him, and he couldn't help but shed a few drops of cold sweat. Sha Chen narrowed his eyes slightly, and with a few flicks of his fingers, he flew out with a few tiny slashes. Bang! The cannonball exploded directly in the air, and then Sha Chen turned his attention to the two people above. One is a girl with blue hair and a ponytail, and the other is a man wearing a crown with 9s painted on both sides of his cheeks. "Mr. 9, Miss Wednesday, what are you doing here?" The two were just about to fire the second cannonball when they were stunned when they heard Sha Chen's words. How could this person know them? They were very shocked at this moment, but the people behind them were even more shocked. Although I knew Sha Chen knew a lot of things before, how did I find out recently that he knew more things? He knew everything, he asked. The key is that he knows the two people who appeared out of nowhere. This is a bit outrageous. You don't even have enough information about Morgans, do you? Who are you? Why do you know our names? Me, you don't even know me. What do you two do for food? Sha Chen looked angry. This familiar tone, this familiar accent, this familiar expression. The people behind him instantly understood Sha Chen's thoughts. As expected, he will start performing. Mr. 9, Miss, was even more confused on Wednesday, and at the same time, there was an inexplicable anger in her heart. "No, who are you? Why should we know you? Ha ha, you two haven't read the messages sent by the club during your recent missions, right?" Sha Chen said with a sneer. When they heard this, the two of them were instantly shocked. Indeed, during this period, they were all thinking of ways to kill the whale, so they did not receive any notification from the club at all. Could it be that the person in front of me is a new cadre in the company? While they were still thinking, Sha Chen's voice came over again. "Listen to me, I am Mr. 1, newly appointed by the boss. Do you understand now?" Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Mr. 1, this is so much higher than their level. The strongest person under the boss. Instantly, a trace of fear filled the hearts of the two of them. "Sorry, Mr. 1, we did not receive the message before, so we did not recognize you, please forgive me." Mr. 9 bowed quickly and said. On the other hand, Miss Wednesday, who was next to her, did not react immediately, but was thinking about something. After a while, she showed a smile. "I said, why don't you pretend to be more like him? There's no way you are Mr. 1. "Oh, why do you see it?" Sha Chen asked with a smile. Miss Wednesday had a confident smile on her face. "Because you can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites shared the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. We have met Mr. 1 before. He looks very imposing. You can tell he is a strong man. And you are so handsome. With fair and tender skin, you don't look like a powerful person. I can only say that you are not good at pretending to be Mr. 1. It's too fake." Miss said firmly on Wednesday. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Sha Chen was confused. He had thought of countless reasons for his exposure, but this was the only one he had never thought of. No, the law stipulates that strong people cannot be handsome. What is the truth? Princess, your judgment standards are really special. Sha Chen asked quietly. So you think I'm not strong enough, so I'm not Mr. One. That's right. In this case, with a swish sound, Sha Chen's figure disappeared instantly. Huh, where is the person? The two of them were stunned. The person who was in front of them just now, why did he disappear all of a sudden? Before they could find Sha Chen, an arm from behind them patted their shoulders. So, what now? Do you think I have the strength? It was a voice that sounded as gentle as jade, but at this moment they felt the biting cold wind. Their bodies trembled unconsciously, and then they all turned their heads slowly like robots. Sha Chen, who was still below just now, was now looking at them with a smile. How is it possible? This thought came to both of them at the same time. It was only a second at most before this man disappeared, right? He came up behind them silently, and they were still on a platform dozens of meters high. This kind of subverted their worldview. At this moment, they immediately believed the identity of Mr. One Sha Chen. Who else could he be if he was so strong? But at the same time, Miss Wednesday meant that Vivi's already desperate heart became even more desperate. Mr. One is so powerful, so how powerful is Crocodile above him? Her eyes dimmed instantly when she thought of this. Can the kingdom of Alabasta be saved? Sha Chen didn't know that his casual display of strength made Vivi think so much, but even if he knew, it didn't matter, just scare her. Okay, as Mr. One, I order you not to take action against this whale. But, Mr. Nine wanted to say something else, but Sha Chen interrupted him directly. Why, what I said didn't work. No, don't dare. In that case, you should go to my ship first. May I ask, sir, who is this ship? Did you see the man in the straw hat over there? Sha Chen said, pointing at Luffy who was looking at them stupidly. I saw it, sir. Is there anything wrong with him? His head is worth 25 million belly. Do you think there is any problem? 25 million Baileys. Is this the one that looks like a fool? Yes, so you know what to do, right? I know. Let's first trick them into Whiskey Peak and then catch them all, right? Sir, Mr. Nine answered first. Yes, the boy is teachable. Sha Chen looked at him with admiration. So, let's go. After saying that, Sha Chen took them to the melee one by one. As for why he didn't just kick it down, don't get me wrong, Sha Chen just doesn't want the melee to be damaged. So, you were with them. You all want to kill Laboon. Did you just say that there was no harm? Kuroka's asked, staring at Sha Chen. Oh, old man, I'm sorry, I'll explain it to you right away. After saying this, Sha Chen's eyes narrowed, and the powerful conqueror's domineering energy came out of his body. Vivi and Mr. Nine instantly fainted on the boat. Conqueror's hockey. Kuroka's was really shocked this time. He originally thought that Sha Chen was just a little pirate with some strength, but now it seems that there is a big deviation from what he expected. It was just a little show to trick them. Otherwise, if I really want to harm Laboon, you can't stop me, can you? So I don't have to lie to you. Kuroka's was also thinking about this issue at this time, and found that it was indeed as Sha Chen said. If Sha Chen really had any malicious intentions, then with his current strength, there is a high probability that he would not be able to defeat Sha Chen. Thinking of this, Kuroka's also believed Sha Chen's words. Those who can awaken conquerors' domineering energy are born kings, and such people do not bother to lie. No, he just finished deceiving those two idiots. Wow, old man Juhua, does that mean you have been here for nearly 50 years now? Ah, that's right. But I also went out for a while during the trip, just sailing with Roger and the others. After that, I came back here to stay with Laboon again. But as Laboon got bigger and bigger, I had no choice but to treat it from the inside. So your treatment is to open these water channels in its body? Zoro asked speechlessly. Is it possible that it was killed by you first instead of hitting it by itself? You know what the heck, green algae-headed boy, you are a doctor and I am a doctor. Don't question my medical skills. Chang, Hidao Yiwen was once again unsheathed. Don't stop me, I will kill him no matter what I say this time. So this whale has been waiting here for his partner for 50 years. Luffy asked in an unclear tone. That's right. Because of this agreement, Laboon has always wanted to break away from the Red Earth continent to find them, but with just a whale, how can it cause harm to this continent? Speaking of this, Kuroka's couldn't help but sigh. While chatting, after a while, everyone saw an iron gate. As the iron door slowly opened, Sha-Chen and the others saw the outside world again. After some time, Sanji slowly exhaled the smoke from his mouth. In 50 years, they will be dead long ago, right? Needless to say, he must be dead. Zoro added. No, in fact, I heard news that they escaped from the Grand Channel, but they forgot their agreement and did not come to take Laboon away. Ah, they forgot the agreement, Luffy said blankly. Are they too bad? They made a promise but didn't keep it, Usopp said angrily beside him. Then uncle, didn't you tell Laboon about this? Why? I told it, but it's a pity that it doesn't want to believe it, and it keeps hitting the Red Earth continent as always. If Laboon keeps doing this, it will die soon. There was a sad look on Kuroka's face. At this time, Sha-Chen, who was on the sidelines, felt that it would be bad if he didn't say anything. After all, he was the one who knew everything. Just when Sha-Chen was about to say something, he caught a glimpse of a sneaky figure from the corner of his eye. Sha-Chen's eyes turned cold, and his figure disappeared instantly. The next second, everyone only saw a black shadow flashing in front of them, and then a huge roar came from the stone wall next to Twin Capes. Everyone immediately turned around and saw Sha-Chen standing there steadily. Nami couldn't help but ask curiously, Sha-Chen, what was that black shadow just now? Oh, it's Luffy. After saying that, Sha-Chen's figure disappeared and sped towards Luffy's direction. Sha-Chen stood quietly in front of the rubble pile, looking ahead. After a while, there was a sound from the rubble. Luffy slowly climbed up from it, looked at Sha-Chen and asked angrily, Sha-Chen, what are you doing? What am I doing? I want to beat you up. After saying that, Sha-Chen appeared in front of Luffy, armed and domineering wrapped around his hand, and beat Luffy. Luffy was angry when he was beaten inexplicably at this time, and kept shouting and attacking Sha-Chen, but the strength gap between the two was too big, and his attacks had no effect at all, and he could only be beaten passively. After a while, the melee docked at the shore, and Zoro and Sanji quickly ran over and grabbed Sha-Chen. Sha-Chen, stop fighting. If you keep fighting, Luffy will be beaten to death by you. At this time, Luffy was all in tatters, with scars all over his body, and Sha-Chen had spit out countless mouthfuls of blood, making him look miserable. Zoro looked at Sha-Chen solemnly. He could tell that Sha-Chen was really angry this time, otherwise he wouldn't have dealt with such a heavy hand. But now he is also a little curious as to what Luffy did to make Sha-Chen, who has always been good-tempered, angry. Sha-Chen took a deep breath and slowly walked to Luffy lying on the ground. Luffy was also staring at him intently at this time. What did you want to do just now? Sha-Chen asked lightly, with a chill in his tone. I want to go. You want to fight Laboon, and then use this to make a new agreement with it so that he will not continue to hit the Red Earth continent. Luffy was a little confused at this time. Why would Sha-Chen know what he wanted to do? Now that you know what he wants to do, why do you stop him? And even beat him up? I don't have a problem with you wanting to fight Laboon, but if I hadn't stopped you just now, you would have wanted to remove Mary's main pole, right? Speaking of this, the chill in Sha-Chen's tone became even more obvious. He stared at Luffy and shouted angrily. Monkey D. Luffy, what do you think of our ship and the Mary? Sha-Chen's voice made everyone around him freeze in place, and no one dared to gasp loudly. Sha-Chen is so scary now. This is the first time they have seen Sha-Chen like this. Do you think that Mary is not our partner? If you want to fight with your own fists, why are you pulling out Mary's main pole? To be honest, Sha-Chen really couldn't stand Luffy's behavior, so he couldn't help but beat him. As a captain, he doesn't care about the ship at all. It can even be said that many of Mary's injuries were caused by Luffy. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. After listening to Sha-Chen's words, Luffy froze on the spot, the anger in his heart disappeared in an instant, and he kept thinking about what Sha-Chen just said. After a while, Luffy slowly stood up, looked at Sha-Chen and said seriously, "Thank you, Sha-Chen, you were right, Mary is our partner, I should love it and not harm it." Sha Chen nodded. Luffy's character of correcting his mistakes is still very good. Then what are you doing standing around now? Go make an agreement with Laboon. Oh, good. After that, Luffy ran towards Laboon. Although Sha Chen looked miserable when he beat Luffy just now, the injuries were not serious and had little impact on Luffy's strength. Then Sha Chen turned to look at everyone again. Okay, let's watch the show aside. Sanji, please make some delicious food. Nami wants to eat it. Miss Nami, is it true? Are you hungry? Sanji quickly ran to Nami's side and said enthusiastically. Ah, right. Nami was confused for a moment and then nodded. Next, two different scenes formed on Luffy's side and Sha Chen's side. He was fighting with Laboon there, while the others were enjoying the food, chatting, and occasionally commenting on Luffy's battles from time to time. After some time, the battle between Luffy and Laboon finally stopped, but according to Luffy's words, the battle between them was not over, and they made a promise to continue the battle after he sailed the Grand Channel for a circle. Hey, you guys are so unjust, you actually eat secretly. Luffy, who had just finished the battle, came over and saw everyone's situation and couldn't help complaining. Which of your eyes saw us eating secretly? Aren't we just sitting here eating openly? Sha Chen asked doubtfully. Luffy thought for a moment with his dim head, and then said, it seems to make sense. After saying that, Luffy also ran over, picked up the food and stuffed it into his mouth. Just now, he was beaten first by Sha Chen and then by Laboon. Now he is almost starving to death. Midway, Kuroka's looked at Luffy and asked, Straw Hat Boy, can you abide by the agreement between you and Laboon? Will it be like the previous pirate group? No, Luffy said firmly. Then he added with a smile. Unless I die. Is this so? Kuroka's was thinking on the spot. At this time, Sha Chen on the side took a sip of coffee and said calmly, Old man, it's not that the Lombard pirates didn't abide by the agreement, but because they are all dead. How do you know the name of that pirate group? Kuroka's was surprised again. I said before, I know a little bit more than 100 million things, so it's normal to know that this pirate group is called the Lumba Pirates, right? Well, when you say that, you are really a normal bird egg. Kuroka stared at Sha Chen with wide eyes, and even stood up and circled around him a few times. Sha Chen now seemed to him to be exuding a mysterious aura. He obviously looks like a big kid, but he didn't expect to know so many things. Sha Chen slowly took a sip of coffee again. Calm down, old man, don't leave, you're making me dizzy. Well, Kuroka sat back down, not struggling with why Sha Chen knew so much about this matter, but followed the question just now and said, why did you say they are all dead? Quote. Because, Mr. 1. Before Sha Chen could say anything, he heard a sound coming from the melee and couldn't help but turn his gaze. I saw that Mr. 9 and Vivi were already awake and were shouting and waving to him. Sorry, wait for me. After saying that, Conqueror's domineering energy came out of his body again and charged towards the two people on the Mary. Then the two fell down again just like before. Unfortunately, they both fell into a coma not long after they woke up. Conqueror's domineering power is really used casually. Kuroka's looked a little embarrassed. Why does it feel like a cannon hitting mosquitoes? No way, this is the most time-saving and labor-saving way. Sha Chen spread his hands. Okay, let's continue the topic we just talked about. All the Lumba pirates were buried in a certain sea area. That's why they didn't come back. It's not that they broke their promise. I don't know where you got your information, old man, but it's wrong. That's it. Kuroka's did not doubt the authenticity of what Sha Chen said. Judging from what Sha Chen has shown during this period, he knows far more than he knows himself. So since Sha Chen said it was wrong, then it is no accident that he did get the wrong news. By the way, old man, do you still remember Brook? Of course, our relationship at that time was pretty good. He's not dead. What? Are you telling the truth? Kuroka stood up excitedly. It is indeed true, but his current situation is a bit complicated. He can be said to be dead or alive. Oh. How do you describe it? Kuroka's was immediately stunned. Both dead and alive, so abstract. Kuroka's couldn't understand what Sha Chen said, and everyone behind him couldn't understand it either. Not to mention now, even when Sha Chen talked about the Lumba pirates before, they were a bit out of touch. At the same time, the same thought popped up in my mind. Why do you know so much when you were in the same boat? However, adhering to the principle of not interrupting if you don't know something, they all ate quietly in the back. Sha Chen continued. Brook did die in a battle, but he ate the underworld fruit, so his body is indeed dead, but his soul is alive. And his current identity is that of a living skeleton. A living skeleton. That sounds so interesting, Luffy said with eyes shining. Indeed, I have never seen a living skeleton like this in my life. I wonder if the bones will break if I cut them with a knife. What will it taste like when using these bones as food? You are devils. Nami and Usopp couldn't help shouting after hearing what Luffy and the other three said. Who are these people? A living skeleton, this thing sounds scary, okay. Ha ha ha, it's really interesting. I wonder if I will have a chance to meet it in the future, Luffy said with anticipation. Sha Chen smiled and said nothing. After a while, Kuroka's finally accepted the fact and smiled. That guy, ha ha ha. After laughing for a while, Kuroka's looked at Sha Chen and said, thank you for bringing me this news. Hey, uncle, what are you talking about? If you really want to thank you, just give us your record pointer. We don't have a record pointer yet. Ha ha ha, of course no problem. Record pointer, what is that? Nami asked curiously. It is a pointer used to guide the direction in the Great Channel. Sha Chen said lightly. Huh, can't a compass work? Look at your compass now. What's so good about this compass? Ah. Why does the compass needle keep spinning? Nami asked in horror. Because the magnetism of the Great Channel is very confusing, and all the weather conditions here are untrustworthy, including white clouds, ocean currents, and wind directions. The only thing that can be trusted is the direction pointed by the recording needle. In the Great Channel, each island is connected by magnetic force, so every time we go to an island, we need to stay on the island for a while, waiting for the recording pointer to record the magnetic force of the island. This time can be long or short. Some can only be recorded in a few days, and some can only be recorded in a few hours. After the recording is completed, he will point in the direction of the next island. Sha Chen talked a lot about record pointers in one breath. He was a little thirsty, so he picked up the coffee next to him and took a comfortable sip. You are really knowledgeable, Mr. Sha Chen. Of course, Sha Chen replied subconsciously, but suddenly he seemed to react to something. Just as he was about to turn his head received a heavy blow. Ah, it hurts. Sha Chen covered his head and wailed. Looking at Nami's cloudy face, she said tremblingly, what's wrong? Why didn't you tell me this earlier? You didn't even ask. Sha Chen felt a little aggrieved. He knew a lot of things, so he must only talk about it when encountering special situations. Otherwise, why would he talk so much when he had nothing to do? But he didn't dare to say these words. Nami's punch just now. It hurts. Sha Chen seriously doubted that Nami was the first person in the Straw Hats to master Ba Tang. This power is quite powerful. Kuroka's took out the record pointer and handed it to Nami, giving Nami a burst of joy. I don't know if it's the nature of a navigator, but I feel happy when I see this kind of pointer. Kuroka's said. There are 7 lines in the Great Channel. Which one are you going to choose? This is the Whiskey Mountain Peak. Sha Chen said lightly. What's the difference between these 7 items? Nami asked curiously. What's the difference? The islands you pass are different. Nami's anger rose again when she went down. If it weren't for the fact that Kuroka's was an old man, she would have asked him to try what is called One Punch Man. Kuroka's was a little confused when he saw Nami's changing expression. He wasn't wrong either. It seems that this little girl has a bad temper, hey. No wonder every one of the crew members on their ship was beaten hard by her. Returning to the topic, Kuroka's continued. No matter which route you choose, the final destination is the final island, Lavdru. So if you are determined to become One Piece, you can choose any one. Then why choose Whiskey Peak? Nami turned to look at Sha Chen. Because this route is more interesting. Sha Chen replied. More interesting. Luffy's eyes lit up again when he heard this, and he said loudly, okay. Then let's decide to go to Whiskey Peak. Hearing this, Nami couldn't help but raise her forehead. Why does she always feel like nothing good is happening? Half a day later. Goodbye, old man Daisy. Luffy stood on the melee and waved to Kuroka's on the shore and shouted. Then he looked at Laboon. Laboon, wait until I travel around the world for a week before I come to you. Before that, you must not knock off the painting on your head. Moo, Laboon responded with a reluctant voice. Gradually, the Mary slowly moved away with one person and one whale watching. Kurokas looked at the Mary in the distance and murmured, Roger, I saw someone like you again. It seems that the world will not be peaceful in the future. Half a day later, we boarded the Mary. At this time, there was a lot of snow on the boat. Why is the weather in this great waterway like this? It was sunny and windy just now, but in the blink of an eye it started to snow heavily. Nami said, shivering while wrapped in a sweater. Then she looked down and saw that Usopp and Luffy were competing to build a snowman. In the end, Usopp must have won. The snowman he built was much better than Luffy's. Even Sha Chen on the side couldn't help but praise Usopp's snowman when he saw it. It was really good. Then Sha Chen picked up the coffee and took a sip. Not to mention, drinking a warm cup of coffee in this weather is so comfortable. Then his eyes turned to the two people above. Hey, you two, come over here and shovel the snow. Why are you standing there? Ah, Mr. One, do we also have to work? Nonsense, you don't have to work, why should I drive you to Whiskey Peak? Hurry up. Mr. Nine wanted to say something else, but finally shut up at the signal from Vivi next to him, and the two of them started shoveling the snow honestly. Seeing the two of them looking like this, a smile appeared on Sha Chen's lips. It seems like I can no longer act on my identity. Sha Chen, there is a huge iceberg ahead, what should I do? While Sha Chen was still thinking, Sanji's voice came from the bow of the boat. Sha Chen slowly stood up and walked slowly towards the bow of the ship. Then he jumped and landed on the head of the goat in front. Looking at the huge iceberg in front of him, he said slowly, Hey, if you encounter a situation like this during navigation, it can be easily solved. Watch my demonstration. After saying that, Sha Chen raised his leg slightly, and then his right leg swung past him like a sharp blade in the wind. A huge slash shot out, speeding towards the iceberg ahead. The slash cut across the iceberg quickly without making any sound. After a few breaths, the iceberg began to crack from the middle and collapsed toward both sides. The cut place in the middle was as smooth as a mirror. Done, call it a day. Sha Chen returned to the original stool, slowly picked up the coffee and took a sip. Comfortable. Sha Chen's face was calm, but the other's eyes widened at this time. What a huge iceberg. Why did it disappear all of a sudden? Are you sure we can learn from this demonstration? Do you think so highly of us? Zoro's eyes were shining brightly. After all, he was the only one who could unleash the slashing attack in the future. The other people's attack methods were not slashing. Vivi and Mr. Nine's feet were trembling constantly at this time. Is this kind of strength against natural disasters really something that humans can possess? Hey, what are you two doing in a daze? Don't be lazy. Sha Chen stared at the two of them. Yes, one day later, an island covered with huge cacti appeared in front of the melee. This was the destination of Sha Chen and the others, Whiskey Peak. Looks like I can enjoy some delicious food tonight. A smile appeared on Sha Chen's lips. But until then, Sha Chen, why did you tie those two people up with ropes and put them in the cabin? Luffy asked curiously, and the others looked at him with the same doubtful eyes. You will know tomorrow. A meaningful smile appeared on Sha Chen's face. But his attention was focused on the voice that just sounded in his head. Ding, check into Whiskey Peak Island successfully and get Somersault Cloud. Somersault Cloud. A look of surprise appeared on Sha Chen's face. This was the first time he encountered something that did not improve his strength. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at the attributes of the Somersault Cloud. Somersault Cloud. Golden Cloud, the fastest speed can reach 100 kilometers per second. All interpretation rights belong to the system. Although Sha Chen didn't know how fast a somersault was, it shouldn't be such a number that has zeros and holes. No wonder it is necessary to add a statement at the end that the right of interpretation belongs to the system. It turns out that this somersault cloud is unauthentic. But Sha Chen was too lazy to care about this. 100 kilometers per second is enough for him, okay. Even Kizaru is not necessarily that fast. Although Kizaru is said to be a shining fruit, his speed definitely does not reach the speed of light. Otherwise, what would happen to others? Who can react at a speed of 300,000 kilometers per second? Sha Chen is quite satisfied with this reward. Although it does not improve his strength, it doesn't matter. His current strength can already deal with most situations. Instead, this somersault cloud now gave him the urge to play, but he restrained it for the time being. If you accidentally stray too far, it will be funny if you can't find your way back later. It seems that in the future he will collect one more thing besides treasure. Permanent record pointer. As long as there is a permanent recording pointer, Sha Chen can travel between all islands in the world. And it's extremely fast, it doesn't take long at all. After closing the system panel, Sha Chen turned his gaze to the surrounding dense fog. Under his domineering perception, he knew everything around him. But he didn't intend to ruin the development of the plot, otherwise he wouldn't have to tie up Vivi and the others. Isn't it good to have a big meal for free? And if nothing else happens, he can see a good show tonight, which is what he is most interested in. Thinking of this, Sha Chen looked around quietly, waiting for the development of things. As the fog gradually dissipated, the surrounding scenery was revealed. Oh, welcome, welcome. I saw countless people surrounding their boat, making a very welcoming appearance. Oh, do everyone here welcome pirates? Luffy said with a happy smile on his face. Usopp also kept spitting out love. So pirates are so popular here. Pretty girl. Sanji watched the women greeting him from the shore, twisting and turning. Except for Sha Chen, only Zoro and Nami looked at this scene a little confused. They seemed unfazed on the surface, but they were wary in their hearts. When the boat stopped, everyone got off the boat. At this time, an old man with long curly hair walked towards them. As soon as he arrived in front of Luffy and others, he said enthusiastically, "Hello, distinguished guests from afar. I am the mayor of Whiskey Mountain, my name, ahem." Boom. Call Agaraboy. Old man, your hair is so curly. Luffy said excitedly, pointing to his hair. Haha, don't worry about those insignificant things, Whiskey Peak is a town that is dedicated to hospitality. It's our mission to treat our guests with hospitality, so can we throw a party for you? Of course, Luffy, Usopp and Sanji said happily together. Nami couldn't help but be speechless looking at these three people. How dare you hold a party without knowing anything about the situation? She always felt that there must be something wrong with this, but she was not worried. With Sha Chen here, she could handle it no matter what happened. This was his trust in Sha Chen. In this case, let's see what tricks these people want to play. At night, in a tavern on Whiskey Mountain. These things are so delicious. I want more, Luffy said inarticulately as he stuffed food into his mouth. I was fighting with the whale and knocked it down with one punch. Hiss, a group of people heard Usopp's words and made a sound of shock. Beautiful lady, hee. Sanji lay on the bodies of several beauties and rubbed them happily. On the other side, Zoro, Nami and Sha Chen were all sitting here drinking. The mayor looked at Nami and said, "Madam, we are going to hold a drinking competition. What do you think? Do you want to participate? These wines are very delicious." Well, forget it, I don't like drinking very much. Nami waved his hand. The winner gets a bonus of 100,000 belly. Please let me participate. After saying that, Nami looked at Sha Chen and Zoro and said, "Hey, you two are joining too." Okay, Sha Chen nodded. If he doesn't participate, this group of people will not be relieved later. But it's also because his wine tastes really good. It seems that he can save hundreds of millions of points to the system space later. After some time, when he drank the 8th cup, Sha Chen took the lead and pretended to be unable to hold on anymore and fell down on the table. It's not because of any other reason, it's mainly because I'm a little full from the drink. Then at the 12th cup, Zoro also pretended to be unable to hold on and collapsed. Nami was left alone to kill everyone. It seems that Nami still wants to get the 100,000 Baileys even for acting. Finally, when Nami defeated the last nun-looking woman, she won the game. At the same time, she couldn't hold on, and fell on the table. Seeing everyone collapsed, the atmosphere in the tavern slowly began to quiet down. Then they walked out one after another. The moment they went out, Sha Chen and the other three opened their eyes at the same time. Zoro looked at the three of them, then at the three people lying on the ground over there, and couldn't help but sneer. TCH, 3 idiots. Hearing this, Sha Chen and Nami both nodded in agreement. 3 idiots indeed. What do you think they want to do? Nami asked. You will know this kind of thing if you go out and see it. Sha Chen said with a smile. Okay, then let's divide our forces into 2 groups. You go and see what's going on outside, and I'll go look for the treasure here. After saying that, Nami walked towards the surrounding rooms. Sha Chen looked at Zoro and said, go and see the situation, and I'll prepare a gift for them. A gift? What do you mean? Zoro was a little confused. You'll find out later. At the same time, there were 2 people standing together outside the tavern. The nun slowly took off her black robe, revealing her bronzed and strong muscles. He asked the mayor, we don't have enough food, so why do we have to hold a banquet for them? The mayor slowly took out a reward notice from his sleeve, and it was clearly Luffy's face painted on it. The head of this guy wearing a straw hat is worth 25 million. If we catch him alive, the profit can be increased by 30%, which is enough for us to live for a while. Is he worth 25 million? The nun, miss, said in shock on Sunday. She really didn't expect that the guy who looked thin, frail, and harmless would have a bounty of 25 million. But, I always have a bad feeling. The mayor, Mr. 8, said worriedly. The first thing is that one of them looks very similar to someone with a ridiculously high bounty. As he spoke, Mr. 8 took out a reward order from his pocket again. Yes, this time it was Sha Chen's reward order. Look for yourself, do you find anything? Miss. Sunday stared at him for a while and then said, you mean the most handsome one among those people? Yes, apart from their different costumes, their faces are exactly the same. So I'm a little worried. Miss. Sunday also nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, it is a bit unreasonable that 2 people with such handsome faces should have this. Mr. 8, your analysis criteria are really unique. Then Mr. 8 said, but the possibility that he is this person is very small. This is a big pirate with a bounty of 300 million. How could it be that we can meet him casually? Another problem is that there is no news from Mr. 9 and Miss. We don't know if they have encountered any trouble. Mr. 8 said this calmly on the surface, but he was very worried in his heart. After all, he knew Miss Wednesday's true identity. She is their hope to save the Alabasta Kingdom. Forget it, let's not talk about this for now. Let's deal with the pirates inside first. Maybe you don't have this chance. A faint voice came from the top of the building, causing their faces to darken instantly, and they unconsciously looked up above their heads. Zoro was sitting on the roof at this time. He pulled out a knife and pointed it at Mr. 8 and a group of people. Aren't you drunk? Mr. 8 was horrified. Which idiot would be completely at ease coming to a town that welcomes pirates? Don't tell me, there are indeed such idiots, such as the 3 remaining on our ship. Another voice came from behind them, attracting their attention. At this time, Sha Chen moved a stool from nowhere and sat in the back, drinking coffee slowly. In front of him were 2 tied people, Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday. Not only were their hands and feet tied, their mouths were also gagged with cloth. I could only signal to Mr. 8 and the others with my crazy eyes, but unfortunately, he couldn't understand. A little ahead of them, there was a circular scratch on the ground that enveloped the 3 of them. Chapter 51. You're not drunk at all. It's the same reason as the green algae head above. Sha Chen replied calmly. There's something very wrong with your town, don't you think? Everyone at Baroque Studio. Hearing Sha Chen reveal their origins, everyone had a look of horror on their faces. Mr. 8 even asked directly, why do you know our identities? You don't need to know how I know. After that, Sha Chen looked at Zoro and said, I'll leave this group of people to you. You guy. Zoro curled his lips. Then he turned to look at the 2 knives on his waist. Yukizuka, 3rd generation Kitetsu. This may be a chance to give you a try. After saying that, Zoro jumped down and rushed directly into the crowd. Mr. 8 turned to look at Miss Sunday and said, you go deal with the swordsman, and I will rescue Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday. In his opinion, the safety of Her Royal Highness the Princess is the most important. Mr. 8 ran towards Sha Chen and watched him getting closer and closer to the princess, but the man was still drinking coffee and didn't make any move. Mr. 8 couldn't help but reveal a smile on his face. Got it. However, bang, the sound of hitting something was heard, and Mr. 8 was seen hitting a golden cover. Then he slowly slid to the ground and fell backward. Tisk, tisk, it hurts to see you running so fast. Sha Chen joked from inside the hood. The golden cover in front of me is the range of the circular scratches on the ground. Yes, it is the cover Sun Dasheng used to protect his master every time. So based on this illusion, he named this trick, Master, don't be afraid of the cover. And the method of use is actually very simple. Just mobilize your own energy. Needless to say, actually take out the stick and scratch it on the ground. Wouldn't that be too stupid? As for the round mark on this place now, he just paid tribute to the original version. This skill is the first skill that Sha Chen has developed by himself in a true sense. Otherwise, all skills are obtained by punching in from the system, which makes him seem very nagging. Mr. 8 slowly got up from the ground. A stream of heat flowed from his nasal cavity, and he couldn't help but touch it with his hand. The nose, which was not very big at first, was swollen at least several times in size at this moment, and blood was constantly flowing. Then he tore 2 strips of cloth directly from his clothes, rolled them into a ball and stuffed them into his nose. Then he stared at Sha Chen. What kind of magic are you doing? Useful magic. You have to try it before you know whether it works or not. Mr. 8 said stiffly. It's no use. Are you looking like this now? You. Sha Chen's words directly made Mr. 8 furious, and then he said bitterly, I want to see if you can still be so confident later. Mr. 8 walked around behind Sha Chen and stared at him. What are you doing? Sha Chen asked doubtfully. I'm going to defeat you from behind. You despicable villain, you actually used 2 of us as a shield. If I attack you from behind now, if I break the defensive shield later, I will hit you first without hurting them. Be prepared to die. Mr. 8 shotgun. After saying that, several shotguns stretched out from Mr. 8's hair and aimed at Sha Chen's back. I have something to say, you reminded me. Sha Chen's faint voice came, making Mr. 8 have a bad guess in his heart. In order to avoid more trouble, he must break this cover quickly. I saw Sha Chen over there quickly lifting Vivi in front to protect her in front of him. Then he showed a provocative smile towards Mr. 8. When Mr. 8 saw Vivi appearing in front of him, he panicked and had already pressed the trigger. At this critical moment, Mr. 8 turned his head as fast as he could in his life, and finally aimed the wound at the last moment when the bullet came out of the chamber. Zoro, who was fighting over there. As the sudden sound came, Zoro's attention could not help but be attracted. However, as soon as he turned his head, he saw countless bullets flying towards him. In desperation, Zoro subconsciously grabbed the person next to him and blocked him in front of him. After a few breaths, the movement disappeared. Ha, it's so dangerous. Zoro couldn't help but exhale. Then, Sha Chen, what are you doing? Isn't he your opponent? Zoro grabbed his neck and yelled at Sha Chen. Who said he is my opponent? Didn't I just say they would be left to you? And he wants to hit you himself, but he doesn't hit me even though I'm sitting in front of him. What can I do? Mr. 8, why don't I hit you? Don't you have any idea? If you just took the man next to the princess and stood in front of you, you would be done if you saw whether I was intrusive or not. As the delay got longer and longer, Mr. 8 became more and more impatient. Now that Vivi stayed in Sha Chen's hands for 1 more minute, he would worry for 60 more seconds. Thinking of this, Mr. 8 began to change directions constantly, trying to go to the side without Vivi to break the defensive shield, but how could he move as fast as Sha Chen? Every time he arrived at a location, Sha Chen would already place Vivi in front of him, waiting for him. So a very interesting scene happened next. Mr. 8 was jumping back and forth everywhere outside the defensive cover, but a full 10 minutes passed, and not a single bullet was fired. Zoro over there has almost finished all those miscellaneous fish. Ha, ha, Mr. 8 kept panting on the spot and said breathlessly to Sha Chen, do you dare, don't block her, in front of you. Not to mention that he was as tired as a dog, and Vivi over there was already starry-eyed while constantly changing positions back and forth. The cloth in his mouth also fell off. Look at Mr. 8 with a silly smile on his face. Mr. 8, why are you standing upside down? Look, look, the stars are on the ground. After hearing this, Mr. 8 was instantly furious. The pirates, how dare you make their princess look like this? Okay, I won't bother you anymore. I'm sitting here now. If you can break this defensive shield, I will let them go without saying a word. Sha Chen took a sip of coffee and said slowly. Are you telling the truth? Mr. 8's eyes lit up. Of course, Sha Chen smiled lightly. He just wanted to have fun, or did Mr. 8 want to break his defensive shield? Idiot's dream. Even if it were him, he would have to use more than 80% of his strength to break through this defensive barrier. Can Mr. 8 achieve such strength? Don't be kidding, if he had such strength, he would have gone to kill Crocodile long ago. Why would he need to be an undercover agent here? Mr. 8 shotgun. As Mr. 8 roared, countless bullets poured out with fierce tongues of fire, all hitting the defensive cover. But, how is it possible? Mr. 8 had a look of horror in his eyes. I saw that all the bullets fell on the ground after hitting the defensive cover. On the other hand, the defensive cover did not even cause a ripple. A few minutes later, looking at the bullets scattered on the ground and the still indestructible defensive shield, Mr. 8 felt despair in his heart and couldn't help but kneel on the ground. Sha Chen looked at the bullets all over the ground and was amazed. He asked why Mr. 8's hair was so long and thick, and all his emotions were used to hide the bullets. At the same time, the battle on Zoro's side also ended, and the other staff of Baroque Studio now fell to the ground. Well, in that case, I should also. Sha Chen stood up and was about to say something, then he seemed to sense something breathy, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Interesting. Sha Chen turned to look at Zoro and said, the remaining 3 people will be left to you. After that, Sha Chen waved his hand casually, and the master in front of him disappeared, and then his figure also disappeared from the place in an instant. This fool, you left this mess to me again. Zoro said angrily as he looked at Sha Chen, who disappeared. Mr. 8 here saw the defensive shield disappear and ran to Vivi without saying a word, shaking her vigorously. Miss Wednesday, how are you? Now they don't know that their identity has been exposed, so even if they are worried, they still only call her by their code name. After shaking for a while, Vivi finally regained her consciousness. Then she immediately looked at Mr. 8 and said, Ikaram, run away, that man is not something we can deal with. Vivi directly called Mr. 8's real name. At this time, she no longer had so many thoughts. The scene of Sha Chen casually splitting a huge iceberg really scared her. She couldn't even think of any resistance. Princess, you. Just as Ikaram was about to say something, a sound came from the distance. Hey, everyone is here, the traders from Baroque Studio. A woman with an afro and an umbrella came from a distance. Mr. 5, Miss. Valentine's Day, Ikaram exclaimed. Then he asked guiltily. What trader, what are you talking about? Do you want to continue the show? The guard captain of the Kingdom of Alabasta, Ikaram. And you, Miss Wednesday, Princess Vivi. After hearing Mr. 5's words, Ikaram and Vivi's expressions instantly turned ugly. How did you know our identities? Do you think you are hiding well? Baroque Studio is not as simple as you think. Okay, after telling you so much, it's time to send you on your way. Who told you to seek death and have to pry into the boss's secrets? Mr. 5 and the others walked slowly towards Vivi and the others, while holding the boogers in their hands ready to go. Zoro looked at this scene a little curious. What's going on? Is there internal strife? Although he didn't know what happened between them, it didn't stop him from watching a good show. Zoro slowly inserted the knife back into his waist, and then looked at it with interest. At the same time, on a mountain peak next to the town, a figure wearing a white coat and a white hat stood here, looking at the town below. A smile appeared on his lips. Princess Vivi, how should you deal with this situation? Yeah, how should she deal with this situation? The sudden sound coming from the side made Ying Ying's heart slow down for a moment, and then he immediately took a few steps back. He looked towards the place where the sound came from. Sha Chen was looking at her indifferently, with the corners of his mouth raised slightly. Nicole Robin, why are you here? The human figure, Robin, did not immediately answer Sha Chen's words, but stared at him and said word by word, Demon King Sha Chen. Oh, you are indeed the son of the devil. You are one of the few people who know who I am as soon as you see me. A lot of idiots wouldn't recognize me even if they saw me, making it difficult for me to act cool. So, can you answer my question now? What are you doing here? Robin slowly regained her composure after being nervous for a while, because she knew that being impatient was useless. In front of this man, if he really wanted to, she would not have a chance to escape. Fortunately, it seems that he has no such interest now. I came here simply because I was a little bored, so I just came to take a look. Sha Chen didn't say anything when he heard Robin's words, but looked at her with a faint look. It wasn't until Robin was a little out of breath that Sha Chen said calmly, "Okay." Robin was a little confused, and all the words he wanted to explain were stuck in his throat. "No, do you believe me so much? This makes me a little flattered." After thinking about it, Robin still felt that it was a bit unreal and couldn't help but ask, "Do you believe what I said?" "Why don't you believe it?" Sha Chen asked. Sha Chen's answer should be given directly to Robin. It's normal not to believe what the strange pirate said, right? But she still didn't understand what Sha Chen was thinking, so she simply didn't care. Her life was in his hands now, so why did she think so much? Thinking of this, Robin couldn't help but want to give himself a slap, just to join in the fun by doing nothing. Now it's better, his life is not safe. Although Robin was panicking, she still forced herself to calm down and thought about ways to escape. But just as she was about to make any move, an extremely strong momentum pressed on her body, and instantly, her back was soaked with sweat. "Why are you leaving in such a hurry? How about you stay and watch a show with me?" "Can I say no?" "Not really possible." "Then why do you bother to ask?" "In that case, let's watch the show somewhere else, it's been a while." A few minutes later, the two came to the roof of a house, and Sha Chen watched the battle not far away with interest. "I saw that Luffy and Zoro were fighting non-stop at this time, but the difference from the original work was that in the original work, Luffy and Zoro were evenly matched. But the current situation is that Zoro has the upper hand, thanks to Sha Chen. If he hadn't been forced to fight Zoro every day, Zoro's strength would definitely not be what it is now." Thinking of this, Sha Chen couldn't help but rub his chin and start thinking, should he find a chance to train these little brats, otherwise he wouldn't be able to stand it anymore if they were always so weak. Just when he was still thinking, he seemed to see something, stood up immediately, and then disappeared instantly. Chang! The sound of gold and iron clashing was heard, and Zoro's knife slashing at Luffy was being held tightly by a black arm, preventing him from making any progress. "How is this possible?" Zoro's eyes widened. "Why is it impossible? Do you think you are awesome if you understand the realm of cutting iron and become a real swordsman? You're still far behind," Sha Chen said calmly, but secretly sweating in his heart. Fortunately, Zoro has just realized the realm of cutting iron, otherwise he might not be able to catch Zoro's sword with his bare hands based on his still rudimentary armament and haki. Then he looked at Zoro and Luffy and said angrily, "Are you two trying to kill each other with this style of play?" Sha Chen's original intention was just to see the fight between Zoro and Luffy, but he didn't expect that their fight would become more and more fierce, especially Zoro's last knife. If it really hit Luffy, Luffy would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. "So what? I will never forgive an ungrateful person," Luffy shouted. "I'm too lazy to explain to you, let me chop you to death." Zoro was not to be outdone. Then the two started to fight again. "You two are looking for death, right?" Bang, bang, Sha Chen directly punched each of them. Since it doesn't make sense, they have no choice but to take action. This way they will calm down faster. And the fact is just as Sha Chen expected. After some time. "Ahaha, Zoro, if you had told me earlier, I wouldn't have fought you if you had told me earlier. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Didn't I say anything? Did you give me a chance to explain? You just hit me in the face with your fist." It was okay if Luffy didn't say anything, but Zoro got angry when he said it, and he didn't know who it was that just couldn't listen to anyone's words. "Don't worry about that, Zoro, it was just an accident," Luffy said sheepishly. "Okay, since everything is fine, let's go back. Meet them first," Sha Chen said lightly. "Then let's go," Zoro said and walked towards somewhere. But before he took a few steps, he heard Sha Chen say, "Zoro, you're going the wrong way." Ahem. Zoro pretended to cough casually and then turned around and continued walking naturally. Seeing this scene, Sha Chen couldn't help but shake his head, and then followed Zoro. He had to follow Zoro, otherwise the person would disappear while walking. As for Robin, he had already disappeared when he came to stop Luffy and the others from fighting. But it doesn't matter, he wouldn't do anything to Robin originally. Otherwise, without Robin, who will translate the historical text? Sha Chen. Sha Chen was walking when he suddenly heard Luffy calling his name, and couldn't help but turn his head in confusion. What's wrong? Can you teach me to fight? I want to become stronger. The battle with Zoro just now made Luffy understand that Zoro has been making progress without knowing it, but he has not made any progress at all. Zoro's knife made him feel the danger of death. If Sha Chen hadn't stopped him, he might have been seriously injured now. After hearing this, Sha Chen looked at Luffy intently and didn't speak for a long time. And Luffy was staring straight at Sha Chen, his eyes full of determination. After some time again, come tomorrow. After saying these words, Sha Chen turned around and continued walking forward. And Luffy also showed a happy smile after receiving Sha Chen's answer. Full of longing for tomorrow's arrival. Sha Chen was also thinking in his mind while walking. We really need to find a way to improve Luffy's strength. The enemies they are encountering now will gradually make Luffy and the others feel weak. Sha Chen couldn't help but sigh when he thought of this. Hey, it seems that he will be very busy next time. There was no other reason why he didn't help Luffy and the others improve their strength before, it was simply because he was too lazy. But now there is no other way, we really have to help them, so that they can have the strength to solve the next series of difficulties more easily. However, Zoro's current strength is much stronger than at this period in the original work. You must know that in the original work, he only realized the realm of cutting iron when he fought Mr. One in Alabasta. It's been quite a while now. If I wait until I get to Alabasta to call Mr. One, why don't I just call him casually? Thinking that Sha Chen was inexplicably motivated, he worked hard to improve the strength of Luffy and the others. What will happen when Alabasta comes? I'm looking forward to it. The next day, Mr. Sha Chen, do I really not need to pretend to be Princess Vivi to lure away the pursuers? No, how many times have I said it? No. Sha Chen's angry eyes stared at Ikarim, with veins popping up on his forehead, as if he was choosing someone to devour. Ikarim, is there something wrong with you? Why are you so annoyed? You have asked this no less than 10 times since last night. Now, let me tell you one last time. You don't have to do anything, just stay in this town, understand? As long as I'm here, even if Crocodile comes, there's nothing I can do to you. Do you understand or not? Listen, I understand. Ikarim raised his hands upright with a hint of embarrassment on his face. There was nothing he could do, and he didn't want to worry so much, but he still felt panicked. That was Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Thinking of this, Ikarim couldn't help but want to ask again. When Sha Chen saw the way he hesitated to speak, his face immediately became clouded. If you dare to say another word, I will kill you right now. Do you believe it? Ikarim swallowed up everything he wanted to say in an instant, watching Sha Chen keep nodding wildly to indicate that he understood. Seeing him like this, Sha Chen let out a deep breath. This caused his blood pressure to soar, and he almost needed to be put on a ventilator. Then Sha Chen turned to look at everyone and said, "Follow me." Should I go too? Usopp asked tremblingly. He learned from Luffy that Sha Chen was going to teach them how to fight today. Since it was all about fighting, injuries would definitely be inevitable. So Usopp is a little timid now. Nonsense. Stop whining and catch up quickly. After saying that, Sha Chen walked towards the outside of the town. Immediately afterwards, Luffy and others followed him and walked out. Although Usopp was reluctant, there was nothing he could do. Everyone had gone, so he couldn't be the only one not to go, right? Then a group of people walked out of the town in a mighty manner. In addition to Sha Chen and his group, there were also Vivi, Ikarim, Mr. Nine, and Miss. These people all went there on Sunday. Although Sha Chen didn't ask them to go, he didn't object to them either. Then they can go watch the battle and learn from it, right? After a while, everyone followed Sha Chen to an open space outside the town. Sha Chen turned to look at them, pondered for a moment and then said, "First of all, I want to teach you the 6 marine moves. Next, I will demonstrate these moves one by one. Marine 6 styles. Are they the moves in marine?" Zoro asked in confusion. Right, then if we learn their moves, won't they come to catch us? Usopp said in horror. But after he said this, everyone looked at him involuntarily, with expressions on their faces like they were looking at a fool. What are we? Pirate? Isn't it normal for Marine to catch pirates? Does it mean that if you don't learn from him, he won't arrest you? Sha Chen was a little speechless. This Usopp loses his wits as soon as he gets scared. But why do you know Marine's moves? Sanji also asked from the side. You care about me, Sha Chen said angrily. Okay, stop pushing Lai Lai and watch my next moves carefully. First of all, the first one is the most versatile move among the 6 moves, shaving. The so-called shaving means stepping on the ground more than 10 times in a very short period of time to achieve the effect of high-speed movement. Just like this. As soon as Sha Chen finished speaking, his figure instantly disappeared from the place and then appeared in front of everyone. See Gui, Sha Chen, is this the skill that disappeared every time before? Luffy asked excitedly. That's right, Sha Chen nodded, and then continued. As for this technique, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, you 3 can consider learning it. As for Usopp and Nami, you 2 can just take a look at it for now. Learning the Marine's 6 styles requires certain physical requirements. Luffy and the other 3 can barely do it now, and Nami and the 2 of them can't even do it. Sha Chen brought Nami and Usopp with him today not mainly to teach them the 6 styles, but to teach them how to see, hear, and look. This does not have any physical requirements. The next demo is Moonwalk. Moonwalk is a variant of shaving. It changes the trajectory in the air by stepping on the air at a shaving speed just before falling during the jumping process. This move is very important. With it, you have the ability to fly. After speaking, Sha Chen also demonstrated a wave of moonwalk operations to them. The next thing I want to demonstrate is land jaw. Paper drawing. I feel that the remaining 2 finger guns and iron blocks of Marine Type 6 are useless to you, so I won't demonstrate them. Whatever these 4 want to learn is up to you. It doesn't matter if you don't even learn it. This is purely up to you. Because learning will definitely consume energy, and I can't guarantee the gains or losses. Sha Chen's words made everyone slightly stunned, and the excitement in their eyes gradually faded, but Zoro's expression did not change at all. He has no interest in these moves at all, only kendo is his true love. Sha Chen then said, okay, the 6th form of Marine is only second, the next thing to teach is the most important thing. Listen, in this world, there is a kind of power that is standard for all strong men, without exception. Hiss. Everyone couldn't help but take a breath after hearing Sha Chen's words, full of anticipation for what Sha Chen would say next. This kind of power is called domineering in the world. Haki. Luffy was a little confused. Why did he feel like he had heard this name somewhere? Suddenly, Luffy had a flash of idea and asked Sha Chen, is it the Conqueror's Haki that Uncle Chrysanthemum mentioned last time? You were right to say that, but you are also wrong. Haki is a general term, Conqueror's Haki is just one of them, and there are very few people who have awakened it. It all depends on their qualifications. Then do you think I have the qualifications? Luffy asked Sha Chen expectantly with his eyes wide open. A little bit, Sha Chen replied calmly. Only one of them. Luffy's tone was full of frustration when he heard Sha Chen's words. Seeing Luffy like this, Sha Chen didn't say anything. Of course, he wouldn't tell Luffy that his qualifications were pretty good, but he still had to give a shot to his self-confidence. Otherwise, it will be too long to wait. Conqueror's domineering is another matter, but what I want to say next is the key point. At this point, Sha Chen glanced at everyone, and then said word by word, and I require each of you to master it. There are 3 types of Haki. In addition to the Conqueror's Haki mentioned just now, there are 2 other types, Armed Haki and Wisdom-Colored Haki. That's what I want you to master. Look carefully, Armed Color Haki is actually like a pair of armor. When the armor is hard enough, it can be transformed into a means of attack. As Sha Chen spoke, he wrapped his armed domineering energy around his right fist, dyeing it black. This was the ability you used to block my move last night? Zoro asked curiously from the side. Right, armed Haki can increase defense and attack power. That's why I can block your sword with my bare hands. In addition, armed color Haki can also be attached to the sword, so as long as your armed color Haki cannot be broken, your sword will not be damaged. How are you? Are you excited? Zoro said nothing, but the excitement in his eyes fully explained his current thoughts. Protect the knife from damage. This is an irresistible temptation for him. In addition, Hawkeye, who you want to defeat so much, has also mastered this power, and his mastery is extremely deep. Zoro's eyes lit up even more when he heard this. An idea came to my mind silently. The first step to defeat Hawkeye is to master the armed color hockey. Okay, let's get back to the topic. In addition to the functions I mentioned above, armed hockey also has a very important function, which is that it can touch the body of Logia users. Logia ability user. What is that? Luffy asked doubtfully, and the others looked at him curiously. I really am. Sha Chen couldn't help but hold his forehead. Then I had to educate them about all the knowledge about devil fruits. After a while, do you understand now? Sha Chen looked at Luffy and asked. Then he nodded quickly like a chicken pecking at rice. Just like the smoke man you met last time, he is Logia's devil fruit user. If you had armed hockey at that time, you would be able to touch his entity. Of course, this has to be based on the fact that he is relatively weak. You still can't meet the top Logia experts, because they can elementalize the areas where they are attacked in advance through their knowledge, color and domineering. The hockey of seeing and hearing is a kind of hockey that can predict other people's actions in advance. After saying that, Sha Chen closed his eyes, and then said to Luffy, Luffy, punch me. Out of confidence in Sha Chen's strength, Luffy punched Sha Chen without even thinking. Then when Luffy's fist was about to touch Sha Chen, he dodged Luffy's attack with a slight shake of his head. So awesome. Vivi and others on the other side looked at this scene with their mouths wide open, and an idea came to their minds. Can crocodile resist such power? Okay, this is the basic principle. Next, let's practice the weapon colors first. I will teach you the method that I think is easiest and quickest. After saying that, Sha Chen's stick appeared in his hand. Looking at the entire pirate world, who is the best teacher? Sha Chen didn't know what others thought, but in his opinion, only one person could hold this title. That is Mr. Kaidakai, one of the 4 emperors who is now far away in the new world. 1 stick teaches Sakura, 2 sticks teaches Bamatu, and 3 sticks awaken the fruit. Teacher Kai directly upgraded Luffy from the barely powerful deputy to the emperor-level combat power in a very short period of time. How long does it take for others to complete this stage? Therefore, Kaido deserves the title of the best teacher. Luffy and the others all have the attribute of becoming stronger when they are beaten. Basically, most of their strength improvements are achieved during battles. So Sha Chen's current idea is to beat them continuously and force out their potential. It's impossible for him to teach them like Rayleigh. His own weapon skills are only at the beginning level, and he doesn't have such a deep understanding to teach them like that. So, how many sticks can he use to teach them armed domineering? Come on, everyone attacks me. As soon as Sha Chen finished speaking, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji rushed towards him. On the other hand, Nami and Usopp were still standing there without moving. Looking at the attacks from the 3 of them, Sha Chen did not move at all. When their attacks were about to fall on him, he turned his head slightly. Then, bang, 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 Sha Chen first dodged all their attacks, and then knocked the 3 of them away in an instant. Then he looked at Nami and Usopp with faint eyes. Aren't you going to attack yet? I have no intention of showing mercy to you. After saying that, Sha Chen's figure disappeared instantly, and then appeared next to Nami and Usopp. When, a drop of cold sweat ran down Nami and Usopp's faces. Then Sha Chen just gave a light blow, and the 2 of them were knocked away. Sha Chen attacks everyone with different intensity. For example, the force on Nami and Usopp was relatively light, but the force on the remaining 3 was relatively strong, especially Luffy, who hit even harder. This is not to say that Sha Chen treats them differently. The main reason is that Nami and Usopp are too weak now. If he hits them with the same intensity as Luffy, it may be a disaster. But even if Sha Chen only used a small amount of strength just now, the 2 of them are now lying on the ground with ferocious faces. Seeing this, Sha Chen couldn't help but sigh slightly. The strength of the 2 of them is really too poor. Then Sha Chen turned his attention to Vivi and Mr. 9 who were watching the show next to him, and shouted to them, "Hey, you 2 will be their opponents." Ah, Vivi and Mr. 9 were stunned when they heard this, and then immediately responded. Yes, The scene just now really shocked them. Luffy and Zoro, two people who could hang Mr. Five and beat them, were like toys in front of Sha Chen. They couldn't help but sigh, is this the man with a bounty of 300 million? So when Sha Chen opened his mouth, they didn't dare to resist at all and quickly agreed. After saying that, Sha Chen looked at Nami, his eyes were as calm as water, and then said calmly, Nami, although you are the navigator on the ship and your strength is relatively unimportant, the enemies we encounter in the future will become stronger and stronger. We can't guarantee that we can protect you all the time, so you have to become stronger yourself. The harder you work now, the better your life will be in the future. Reality is not an anime, danger is everywhere. And because of the arrival of Sha Chen, a little butterfly, some things have changed slightly. As he said, he can't guarantee what situation he will encounter next, so it is necessary to improve Nami's self-protection ability. After saying that, Nami Shachan looked at Usopp again. And you, Usopp, your strength is really bad, Sha Chen said without mercy. Although Usopp will have many scenes of becoming a god in the future. But it is undeniable that his hard power is indeed the lowest on the ship, so Sha Chen feels it is necessary to make Usopp stronger. He would do this even if it was for the birth of Bilan, the most powerful sword in the pirate world after Zoro. So Sha Chen has to give Usopp a little more motivation at this moment. Usopp, you already knew that your father was on the red-haired ship last time, right? Your father is very strong. Do you think that when we meet them in the future, you will fight with your father and then your father will tell you why your strength is so weak? Hearing Sha Chen's words, this picture instantly appeared in Usopp's mind, and then he shouted loudly without even thinking for half a second, no, I don't want to. A smile appeared on Sha Chen's lips after hearing Usopp's words. The Pua method is really useful. Okay, these two are solved, now it's time to deal with the three. Sha Chen turned around and found that Luffy and the other three had stood up again. Luffy rolled up his sleeves, Zoro tied up his turban, and Sanji lit a cigarette. The three people looked at Sha Chen with eyes full of fighting intent. Hey, three little Kurami, I'll let you carry a bag of rice up to several floors later. Then Luffy and the three of them rushed towards Sha Chen at the same time with perfect understanding. Bang! 3 days passed unknowingly, and on this day Sha Chen and the others were finally leaving the island and heading to the small garden on the next island. In fact, the recording pointer had already recorded the island's magnetism, but it was only delayed for a few days due to the improvement in strength. During these 3 days, Luffy and the three of them were either being beaten or on the way to being beaten, but let alone, this method is really useful. The strength of the three of them has been significantly improved, although they have not yet mastered the armed domineering force. But if you continue at this pace, you should be able to master it in no time. The same goes for Nami and Usopp, both of whom have improved in strength. Even his own strength has improved a little during this period of continuous battles, but compared to this way of improving his strength, he still prefers the simple and unpretentious way of checking in and signing in. The improvement is huge and you're not tired at all. Isn't it much better than this? Sha Chen lay on a chair, basking in the sun and blowing the sea breeze, and occasionally drank coffee from time to time. This life is simply too pleasant. This made Sha Chen sigh. Beyond the 3 loans, you are not among the 5 insurances. So comfortable. Hey, Vivi, look at them, don't let me be lazy. Suddenly, Sha Chen shouted to Vivi, who was also sitting on a stool. Although she was also sitting on a stool, she still had a mission. That is to supervise the training of Luffy and the others. In the end, Vivi got on the boat, but Ikarim stayed at Whiskey Peak. Except for Nami, who was a navigator and wanted to observe the sea conditions, everyone else on the ship was blindfolded on the deck and holding a stick in his hand. The 4 people sat in a ring at close range, waving the sticks in their hands around them. The screams and wails were endless. This is the method Sha Chen thought of to train them to see, hear, and feel, which is somewhat similar to the way Rayleigh taught Luffy. Moreover, since they help each other without him, they can have half a day's free time. Now that you feel comfortable, let's take a nap. I don't know how long it took. Hey everyone, try my special drink. A burst of noise woke Sha Chen up from his sleep. He slowly opened his eyes, and what he saw was a group of people lying on the ground with their heads covered, drinking drinks, with happy smiles on their faces. Sha Chen also went to get a drink. He took a long sip of the drink and it was refreshing. It was really delicious. Sha Chen, how long do we have to practice like this? Luffy asked Sha Chen with a sad face. The past few days had really put him through a lot. First he was beaten continuously for 3 days, and then he had no rest at all and was called up early in the morning for training. Not enough sleep. Practice until you awaken to see, hear, and feel. After you awaken to see, hear, and feel, you don't need to train like this anymore, but grow in battle. Then you can relax while sailing. Ah, then when can we awaken to see and hear? Luffy said with a grimace. It all depends on your talent. Also, when training, be aware of the changes around you. Don't just get beaten. When will you wake up? Okay, you see they have started training again. Are you sure you want to stay here? Sha Chen pointed to the 3 people next to him. Seeing this scene, Luffy couldn't sit still for a moment, and immediately ran over to join them. He is the captain, what will happen if he is weaker than the crew? As for Sha Chen, he is the deputy captain, so that doesn't count. Seeing this, Sha Chen smiled happily, feeling inexplicably like an old father nurturing his son to become a talent. Especially Usopp, I don't know if it was what he said last time that made him very motivated. No matter what kind of training he is doing these days, he is the most diligent one, which is very worthy of praise. After looking at them again, Sha Chen's eyes turned to the front, and his thoughts gradually drifted away as he looked at the endless sea. Small garden. It's a bit exciting. A few days later, Sha Chen and his party finally arrived at their next destination, the small garden. Looking at the plants on the island that could only be seen in ancient times, Sha Chen's eyes shone with interest. The little garden is an ancient island, and everything on the island is stuck in ancient times. In addition to these vegetation, there are also a bunch of extinct saber-toothed tigers and dinosaurs from Sha Chen's previous life. And the most important thing is that there are 2 giants of Elbaf, Dongli and Brigi. Sha Chen was very interested in these 2 giants who had fought on this island 100 years ago, and the bounty 100 million years ago had reached 100 million berries. You must know that the bounty at that time was not as high as hundreds of millions of berries like it is now. At that time, the gold content of the 100 million bounty was very high. Especially the combined attack technique used by the 2 of them when they destroyed Kid's ship in the future, it was so powerful. To be honest, Sha Chen wanted to feel the power of his combined attack technique. Of course, he has a way out. If he really can't resist it, he can use Somersault Cloud to escape. Being able to bend and stretch is a principle he has always adhered to. After all, he is not as brave as the ship king. At this time, Nami couldn't help feeling that her legs were shaking a little as she looked at several ferocious beasts from ancient times that appeared on the island from time to time. Well, I think we can actually just stay on the ship and recharge the magnetism. There's no need to go to the island. You think so, Usopp? In this situation, Nami wanted to find someone who could resonate with her, but when she looked at Usopp, she found that Usopp, who was more afraid than him in the past, didn't have the slightest fear this time. Instead, he stared straight ahead. Sha Chen, who saw this scene next to him, couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. It seemed that the training during this period was very effective, and it even made Usopp not afraid anymore. Well, at least that's what it seems on the surface. But in fact, what only Usopp himself knows is that he is still very panicked, but he is just trying not to let himself be afraid. He is a man who wants to become a brave sea warrior. How could he do it just because of this? Actually, I think what you said makes perfect sense, Nami. Let's collect magnetism on the ship. In less than 3 seconds, Usopp's true form was revealed, and his whole body was trembling with fear. Crack, Sha Chen couldn't help but slap his forehead. Misreading. Sure enough, the cowardly personality that has persisted for so many years cannot be changed in a short period of time. Shaking his head, Sha Chen prepared to go to the island to experience what the environment of the primeval forest was like. The moment he stepped onto the island, the familiar system prompt sounded again. Ding, I successfully checked into the small garden, and the level of armed color domineering has been improved. It is currently an intermediate level of armed color domineering. In an instant, Sha Chen felt a surge of energy in his body, and waited for the movement to subside. Sha Chen raised his hand slightly, and the armed color instantly wrapped around it. In Sha Chen's feeling, the intensity was much stronger than before. But he doesn't know exactly how strong it is. Thinking of this, Sha Chen suddenly remembered a question and couldn't help but ask the system. System, when can I master Liu Ying? Ding, when the host breaks through the advanced weapon color, it will automatically master the flow of Sakura, but because the flow of Sakura is just a skill, it is not a withdrawal of domineering strength. So if the host wants to master it, even the intermediate weapon color can be mastered, but the host needs to understand it by himself. Okay, let's go slowly without seeing you off. Let him control Liu Ying by himself. Are you kidding me? You said that it's okay for him to use the armed color every day to increase the strength of the armed color. How does he master such a technical thing? Do you want him to figure it out on his own just based on the words, flowing domineering? Are you kidding me? Isn't this equivalent to telling him that atomic bombs are made using the nuclear fission reaction of atoms, and then asking him to rub one out with his own hands? Although this is much more difficult than mastering Liu Ying, this is the truth. It seems that he should just wait until his weapon color reaches a high level and the system will automatically help him master the flow Sakura. He himself will definitely be ruined anyway. Then Sha Chen randomly found a direction and walked directly to the island. When Vivi saw this situation, she followed him with all her might. After all, in her opinion, staying with Sha Chen was the safest. Then Luffy found a random direction and ran inside excitedly. He has been practicing every day for a while, which has almost bored him to death. Now that he has finally seen an island, not to mention how excited he is. Hey, Zoro, come back and kill a bigger beast for me later, Sanji said calmly. Don't worry, I will definitely bring back a beast of a size that you can't possibly get. Ah, what are you talking about, you stupid green algae head? Are you deaf, Chef Curly? In an instant, an invisible lightning burst out where the two people's eyes met. In this case, Sanji said and jumped directly from the boat. Then let's compete to see who can catch the bigger prey. Okay, let's compete. Are you afraid that you won't succeed? HMPH. The two of them hummed at the same time, and then walked in opposite directions, both of them holding back a sense of energy that they could never lose to the other. Hey, this dinosaur is really big. If you kill it, how many meals will it take to feed the whole ship? Sha Chen said as he looked at the huge dinosaur in front of him. Mr. Sha Chen, is it time to discuss how many meals this dinosaur can feed us? Vivi on the side almost cried when she saw this scene. This is a dinosaur, can you respect it? However, Sha Chen didn't care what Vivi said at this time, but thought of a question. It seems that he can kill all these dinosaurs and put them in the system space. In this way, you can eat dinosaur meat even outside the small garden. Sha Chen feels that he is really a genius. Thinking like this, Sha Chen looked at the dinosaur in front of him with fiery eyes. It seems that he is going to physically exterminate the dinosaurs on this island. Hey, Lanjiao. Several slashes burst out from Sha Chen's feet, speeding towards the dinosaur in front of him. In less than a second, the dinosaur's body was divided into several parts before it could react. Then it disappeared instantly and was taken into the system space by Sha Chen. In the following period, Sha Chen continued to take Vivi to hunt dinosaurs. Vivi also went from being shocked at the beginning to being calm now. There are a lot of things. After you experience them once, you won't be so afraid of them. This is the case with Vivi now. Seeing Sha Chen killing these dinosaurs like chopping melons and vegetables, Vivi had an inexplicable illusion that I could do it too. If her body's instinct hadn't restrained her, she might have had to go up and give these dinosaurs two big dicks. This is it. Sha Chen, who was hunting for dinosaurs, had a look of surprise in his eyes. A house made of wax appeared before his eyes. If he remembered correctly, Mr. 3 should have done this, right? It's a pity that no one is here. With his sense of sight and color, he didn't sense the presence of anyone inside. But since you happened to meet him, let's go in and have a look. Sha Chen walked to the door, pushed it open and walked in, then sat generously on the wax chair inside. On the table were several teacups and a pot of still warm tea. Sha Chen took out 2 cups from his system space and handed one to Vivi. He has no habit of drinking from other people's cups. Then Sha Chen gently touched the teapot with his hand, and a cluster of flames popped out. Who doesn't know how to play with fire these days? After the tea was heated, Sha Chen poured a cup for himself and Vivi respectively. Sha Chen couldn't help but sigh after taking a sip of tea. I still have to drink Earl Grey tea for this afternoon tea. Indeed, this Earl Grey tea tastes really good. Vivi also sighed. Why did a wax house suddenly appear in this forest? This should be done by the person codenamed Mr. 3 in your company. Oh, Mr. 3, Vivi replied subconsciously, but the next second she seemed to feel that something was not right. What, Mr. 3? Vivi spit out a sip of tea towards Sha Chen before she drank it. Sha Chen. Sha Chen made a slight move with his hand, and a strong wind appeared, blowing aside the tea that Vivi spit out. What's all the fuss about? No. Sorry, Vivi said apologetically. Her thinking has not changed yet. Although she knows that Sha Chen is very strong, she still can't help but feel a little scared when she hears the person at the front of Baroque Studio. Just when Sha Chen was about to say something else, a huge noise came along with a slight earthquake. This is. Sha Chen walked out of the room and jumped into the sky in a few seconds. I saw that the volcano in the middle of the island was erupting violently. At the same time, he also saw two giants standing up and staring at each other. It was Brigitte and Tori. Sha Chen murmured, "The battle of giants. It's quite interesting." After saying that, Sha Chen shouted, "Somersault cloud." In an instant, a yellow cloud appeared in front of Sha Chen's eyes, and then flew to Vivi below under his control. Come up, Vivi. Ah, can you step on this cloud? Vivi couldn't help but swallowed. But out of trust in Sha Chen, she slowly stood up. The moment she stepped on it, a soft feeling hit her, making her couldn't help but step on it a few more times. Needless to say, it's quite comfortable. But the next second, somersault cloud took her across hundreds of meters and appeared in front of Sha Chen in less than a second. It really scared her to death. Sha Chen didn't hesitate and stepped on it. Then, under the control of his mind, the somersault cloud instantly flew above the battle between Dongli and Brigitte. When it comes to watching a battle, the perspective from the air is definitely the best. The main reason is that it takes no effort to use somersault clouds. If you use moonwalk, you have to step on the air from time to time. Aren't you tired? If you want to say that he didn't have the conditions before, then forget it. Now that he has the conditions, he must make good use of it. At this time, Dongli and Brigitte below were clashing again and again, and the aftermath of the battle made the surrounding trees rustle. Sha Chen looked at this scene and was amazed. This strength is indeed good, but it is not as strong as Sha Chen imagined. No wonder Mr. 3 and the others were in such a mess in the original work, even though it was said that they were injured. But it also proves from the side that their strength is not very strong. To be honest, it was really easy for Sha Chen to beat them with his strength. Now after watching their battle, the only thing that interested him was their combined attack skills. Don't let him down. The fierce battle continued, but as time passed, the physical strength of the two people began to slowly decline, and they continued to become more and more angry. At a certain moment, the two men's eyes narrowed, and the shields in their hands smacked each other's head at the same time. Two, clang, sounds were heard one after the other. The 73,466th battle. The 73,466th level. Then they both fell backward. After about 10 seconds, the two of them laughed at the same time. But this laughter sounded a bit, to Sha Chen, a bit unique. At the same time, Sha Chen also saw Luffy below, so he controlled the somersault cloud to float over. See Gui, the battle between the giant uncle is so fierce. Luffy couldn't help but sigh. It's really intense. When Luffy heard the sound, he couldn't help but turn his head and look towards the place where the sound came from. At a glance, he saw Sha Chen and Vivi sitting on a yellow cloud. In an instant, Luffy ran to Sha Chen's side and circled around him vigorously. Sha Chen, why are you sitting on the cloud? Where did your cloud come from? As he spoke, Luffy couldn't help but poke the somersault cloud with his hand, and the soft touch made him even more excited. Then he looked at Sha Chen with burning eyes. Sha Chen knew what he was thinking when he looked at him like this, and said angrily, "This was made by my ability, I can't give you one." The excitement on Luffy's face faded at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his whole body turned from excitement to listlessness in just 1 second. Sha Chen didn't continue to look at him. Anyway, Luffy's character would be lost for a while. He would be fine later. Want to ride on his somersault cloud? He doesn't have any hair. That's how he treats them differently. Women can sit on his clouds, but men, get out of here. Boom. The sound of footsteps hitting the ground came, and along with the slight vibration of the ground, Dong Li slowly appeared in front of Sha Chen and the others. Sha Chen raised his head slightly and looked at Dong Li. The feeling of seeing this giant clan from the sky was completely different from that of the giant clan on the ground. From this perspective, this giant looks a bit big. Thinking of this, Sha Chen couldn't help but be a little curious. If the ordinary giants are so big, how big must the Oz ones be? Luffy, is this your friend? The sound of Dong Li's urn came. Yes, Uncle Giant, they are all my partners. Ahaha, since I am your partner, you are welcome to eat these dinosaur meats as you like. By the way, I just got a few barrels of wine from Brigitte, and he said they were given by a girl with a long nose and orange hair. Oh, they're my partners too. Really, ha ha ha. In this case, I will assume that these wines were given to me by you, and I won't be polite. After saying that, Dong Li took out a few small wine barrels and prepared to drink them in one gulp. Sha Chen's eyes narrowed when he saw this scene. In an instant, Sha Chen's figure disappeared from the place, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of Dong Li. Sha Chen kicked all the wine in Dong Li's hand away. Dong Li's eyes narrowed, he looked at Sha Chen and asked unkindly, "Friend, what are you doing?" "You'll find out later." Before Dong Li could ask the next question, all the wine barrels that had just flown exploded in the air. This. Luffy's face was filled with horror. Why does the wine explode? Sha Chen replied calmly. In addition to us, people from the Baroque studio are also here on this island, and they have tampered with the wine. You'll be found dead. Luffy showed his original expression, and then asked doubtfully, "Why do you know these things, Sha Chen?" "You will know when you reach my level of experience." Due to the passage of time, Sha Chen didn't actually remember the explosion at the cocktail party. It wasn't until he sensed something strange in the wine that he remembered the plot, and then decisively kicked the barrel away. But at this time, Dong Li still looked at them with a frown, and did not believe Sha Chen's words. "What kind of trick are you playing? Didn't you hear it already? Uncle Giant, there are other people on this island, and they are very interested in your head." Uncle Blue Ogre Tori. Dong Li's eyes narrowed when he heard Sha Chen call out his title, and then he stared at Sha Chen. "Since you know my title, it proves that you have seen my reward order, so, you are also here to take my head. After all, I know how attractive my 100 million head is to people." 1.100 million. Uncle, do you have a reward of 100 million? See Gui. Luffy shouted in surprise. 100 million. It's indeed a lot, but I'm not interested in your heads. Otherwise, why did I stop you from drinking the wine just now? Wouldn't it be more convenient to let the wine explode in your stomach and then kill you? Sha Chen said lightly. Of course it's because you know that you can't defeat me even if I'm injured, so you want to gain my trust through this method, and then give me a fatal blow. What a pity, your plan is so clumsy, I can see through it at a glance. Speaking of this, Dong Li couldn't help but reveal a proud smile on his face. An expression that sees everything through. Seeing Dong Li's appearance, Sha Chen didn't know what to say for a moment. "No, you have a very rich imagination. Wouldn't it be a waste of your talents to spend all day in this deserted place? And you are quite confident in your strength. Is it the 100 million bounty that gives you the confidence?" Sha Chen didn't say anything, but directly threw out his reward order, and then said calmly. "Then let Marine tell you whose head is more valuable. Although Dong Li's 100 million bounty has a relatively high gold content, but so what, he is the one with the higher bounty now. It is impossible to say that the bounty from 100 years ago will be upgraded now, right? 300 million berries, Dong Li said in disbelief. So now you think I need to put on so much drama if I want to deal with you? Sha Chen put his hands behind his back, and a faint air of pretentiousness filled the scene. He could now understand why Luffy and the others were so obsessed with the bounty. This pretense is really useful. And those with higher bounties are naturally better than those with lower bounties, so Zoro likes to use his bounty to taunt Sanji so much. This can be summed up as follows. Facts speak louder than words. Although the level of the bounty is actually determined based on the threat, it has quietly become a standard for measuring strength. Therefore, if my bounty is higher than yours, I am better than you. No, this is not you either. Are you using someone else's reward order to fool me? Sha Chen, you have bad eyesight. How could you tell that this is not me? Sha Chen is really angry. No one can recognize him. How can he pretend to be so cool? Except for looking a bit like you, this reward is not you in any other way, right? Nonsense, can I still be different from myself? Ha, Sha Chen took a deep breath and calmed down his mood. Since you think this is not me, then I will prove it to you. Anyway, I was planning to fight with you. After saying that, Sha Chen's eyes narrowed and he faintly uttered a few words. Demon form, turn on. As Sha Chen finished speaking, a black flame appeared out of thin air and enveloped him. Gradually, the clothes on Sha Chen's body began to turn black and seemed to have a flowing effect. The golden pupils and black hair all turned to blood color at this moment. Finally, as a black flame surrounded Sha Chen, a powerful wave spread out in all directions with Sha Chen as the center. Black and red lightning continued to shine in the sky. The powerful momentum even uprooted the surrounding trees. At this time, Vivi and Luffy who were below were both rushed away by this momentum. What is this? Vivi grabbed a stone and said in horror. Sha Chen said it seems to be one of his forms. Luffy said, holding the stone with one hand and scratching his head with the other. At this moment, Vivi's awe for Sha Chen couldn't help but rise to a new level. The time spent together clearly made her feel that Sha Chen was not that scary, but now looking at Sha Chen's demonic form. Ouch, so scary. This fluctuation affects not only Luffy and the others, but also Brigitte, Nami and others on the other side. It's just that they are no longer affected by the momentum here, but they must be aware of such a big movement. Brigitte's eyes narrowed. That direction is Dongli. Thinking of this, Brigitte didn't hesitate at all. He picked up the axe next to him and rushed in that direction. Usopp and Nami did not hesitate when they saw this situation, and both ran towards the direction of the noise. Not only that, all the animals on the island felt the movement at this time, and they ran around in panic. Sanji and Zoro, who were somewhere, were also heading towards this place. At this time, on Sha Chen's side, Dong Li, who was facing Sha Chen, felt even more oppressive. So, am I the same as in the reward order? Sha Chen asked lightly. Dong Li did not answer, but looked at Sha Chen solemnly. Don't be so nervous, relax. Here, this is the wine I brought, there is absolutely no danger. Sha Chen took out a few barrels of wine from Whiskey Peak from the system space and threw them to Dong Li. During the few days at Whiskey Peak, he didn't just train Luffy and the others. In his occasional free time, he borrowed all the wine on the island. To put it bluntly, if he could find a drop of wine in the entire Whiskey Mountain when he left, he would lose. Don't ask why he is so confident, ask him because he is so domineering and knowledgeable. As for when, let's wait until he travels around the world for a week. Dong Li took the wine thrown by Sha Chen, opened the barrel and poured it in without hesitation. Judging from the momentum that just erupted from Sha Chen, he was definitely not his opponent, so if Sha Chen really wanted to kill him, there was really no need to stop him from drinking the barrel of explosive wine. Moreover, he had just recognized something contained in the aura that erupted from Sha Chen. Conqueror's dominance. A person with the potential of a king believes that the other party will not use such despicable methods. After a few breaths, Dong Li drank all the barrels of wine. Ha ha ha, it feels good. I haven't had such a delicious wine in a long time. Just when he was about to say something else, an anxious voice came. Hey, Dong Li, are you okay? Dong Li turned around when he heard the sound and found that it was Brigitte who was calling him and running towards him. Oh, Brigitte, it's okay, this guy just bought me a drink of wine. Brigitte, who rushed over at this time, was stunned when he heard Dong Li's words. He first looked at Sha Chen and Dong Li, and then at the shabby land around him. After a long while, he choked out a sentence. The way you treat me to a drink is a bit unique. Well, Dong Li felt a little embarrassed when he heard this. He couldn't say that it was because he didn't believe Sha Chen just now that it led to the current result, right? Doesn't that make him look a little stupid? No, you must not let Brigitte know. Thinking of this, Dongli immediately said, "Well, it's mainly because this little brother wants to have a fight with me, and the reward is these barrels of wine." There is a reason why Dongli said this, because he did feel the fighting spirit from Sha Chen, and he could see that the other party wanted to fight with him. As a soldier of Elbaf, even if he knows that he is not the opponent's opponent, he must not be timid in fighting, because this is his honor as a soldier of Elbaf. Sha Chen couldn't help but chuckle when he heard Dong Li's words. He still liked Dong Li's wise look just now, but he didn't intend to dismantle him, but followed his words and said, "Yes, I want to fight. But not with him, but with you too." Brigitte couldn't help but be confused for a moment after hearing this. "You said you wanted to fight the two of us." "Yes, as reward, I will give you a few more barrels of wine." "Boy, are you serious? The combined strength of the two of us is not simply 1+1. Brigitte said, staring at Sha Chen. "Of course I'm serious." Sha Chen nodded, then suddenly raised his voice and shouted, "I, Sha Chen, I hereby challenge the two warriors of Elbaf, Dongli and Brigitte." The moment Sha Chen finished speaking, Dongli and Brigitte's eyes narrowed, and the expressions on their faces began to become serious. Then they all said, "I, Dongli, me, Brigitte, your challenge accepted." After hearing the answer he wanted, a smile appeared on Sha Chen's lips. For these two warriors who regard fighting as an honor, challenging them in their own way is undoubtedly the best way. "Then, I'm coming." As soon as the words fell, Sha Chen's figure disappeared instantly. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Dong Li. Sha Chen raised the stick in his hand and hit Dong Li hard. As a man who had experienced thousands of battles, Dong Li had already reacted the moment Sha Chen appeared. He also picked up his sword and faced Sha Chen. The moment the sword and the stick collided, a powerful shock wave spread from the center of the fight between the two, causing the surrounding land to be baptized again. And obviously Sha Chen's size is completely incomparable to Dong Li, but now Sha Chen is the stronger one in terms of strength. Under Sha Chen's constant pressure, Dong Li's sword began to bend slowly. At this moment, a voice came from behind Sha Chen. "Boy, don't forget there is me." Brigitte's axe struck Sha Chen at an extremely fast speed. Seeing this, Sha Chen also gave up attacking Dong Li, used moonwalk to avoid the attack, and then hit Brigitte with a stick with his backhand. Chang! The sound of gold and iron clashing was heard, and the weapons of the two men collided in the air. But in just a moment, Brigitte's face showed a look of horror. This power. How can it be so strong? The power from Sha Chen's little stick was at least several times that of Dong Li's when he fought with him, so he only lasted for about a second, and Brigitte was knocked away with his axe, and landed a few times. 100 meters away. "Brigitte!" Dong Li shouted. "Uncle Dong Li, don't be distracted during the battle." Sha Chen's voice came faintly from behind Dong Li, instantly making him break into a layer of cold sweat. When Dong Li turned around quickly, and what caught his eye was a small stick, and his pupils suddenly shrank. He quickly moved his shield in front of him. Bang! Another powerful and deep voice came. Dong Li also received the same flight package as Brigitte. Sha Chen stood in the air and looked at them quietly. At this time, Sha Chen's demon-like appearance and the sight of the two giants struggling to get up on the opposite side caused a great shock to everyone. "Is this Mr. Sha Chen's power?" Vivi asked dully. "Me too, this is the first time I see Sha Chen fighting like this." Luffy next to him also said in shock. At this moment, he deeply felt the gap between himself and Sha Chen. The strength that Sha Chen showed now was completely different from when he fought against them. It was not on the same level at all. From this point of view, Sha Chen usually releases the sea every time. At this time, there was another place not far from Sha Chen. Mr. 3, are we sure we are going to cause trouble with these people?" A person who looked like a little girl said in horror to the wretched man with a 3 in his hair next to him. "This, Miss Golden Week, what do you think?" "I think we should make a strategic retreat first." Mr. 3 pondered for a moment, and then said with great agreement, "I think you're right." At this moment, Mr. 3 just wanted to escape from this place, and all the boss's orders were forgotten at this time. Although he will definitely die if he disobeys the order, as long as he does not go back, the sea is so big that there is no place for him. In this case, the chance of death will be much smaller, but if he is asked to go up and trouble Sha Chen now, he firmly believes that he will die 100%. A fool should know how to choose between these two options, right? Then the two of them tiptoed towards the outside of the forest. Hey, you two. I'm not Mr. 3, and I don't know anything about Baroque Studio, let alone Crocodile. The sudden sound frightened Mr. 3 so much that he couldn't even speak. Zoro, Sanji. They didn't say anything yet. Originally, the two of them saw someone sneaking around and wanted to ask them what they were doing. But now it seems there is no need to ask. Baroque Studio, Crocodile, and Mr. 3 as this person calls him, combined with the 3 inches hairstyle on his head, aren't you just asking for it? They are not stupid like Luffy, they still have some brains, okay. Sanji's eyes turned cold and he said coldly, Baroque Studio. Are you here to hunt down Vivi again? You are really haunted, Zoro also said at the side, and then slowly pulled out the knife from his waist. No, we are not. Mr. 3 waved his hands in a hurry to explain, but it was obvious that Zoro and Sanji would not give him this chance, and they both rushed towards him. Mr. 3 couldn't help but cursed secretly, and then looked at Zoro and the others with cold eyes. You forced me to do this. He really doesn't dare to provoke Sha Chen. After all, he has a bounty of 300 million, but you two who don't even have a cent bounty dare to trouble him. If a tiger doesn't show off its power, do you really think it is a soft persimmon? At this moment, a new idea appeared in Mr. 3's mind. He wanted to kidnap these two people. In this way, even if something happens later, he can escape with these two hostages. With this thought, Mr. 3 turned his hand into wax and waved it, and 2 large balls of wax flew towards Zoro and Sanji. But the current Zoro and Sanji are not comparable to before. They are not just playing around these days. Every time they think of that battle, they can't help but feel a little scared, but it's true that their strength improves quickly. At least in their current view, Mr. 3's attack was much slower than when Sha Chen hit them. Both of them just dodged the incoming wax with a slight dodge. How is it possible? Mr. 3 was horrified. The speed of his move is very fast. In previous battles, he has always been successful in attacking enemies, and can easily block the opponent's ability to move. But now how can these two people avoid his moves so easily? He is not like Sister Lee. But he didn't have much time to think at this time, because Zoro and Sanji were already in front of him. Candle wall. He subconsciously turned the wax in his hand into a wall to block himself. Then he stood behind the wall and said confidently, the hardness of my candle wall is very hard. You guys are absolutely. Before Mr. 3 finished speaking, the smile froze on his face. He saw that the candle wall, which he thought was very hard just now, was beginning to have cracks on both sides, and the cracks were getting bigger and bigger. Boom! With a violent sound, what caught his eyes were 3 knives and a foot. Puff! After Zoro slashed him with 3 knives, Sanji kicked him with his feet. Mr. 3 was kicked dozens of meters away with a powerful force. At the same time, blood spattered from the knife mark on his chest, and then he fell to the ground without moving. Mr. 3, defeated. Then Zoro looked at Miss Golden Week aside with cold eyes. Seeing Zoro's fierce face, Miss Golden Week tilted her head and fainted. Hey, Zoro, why are you scaring a little girl? Isn't that so inappropriate? She fainted on her own, what does it have to do with me? Zoro shrugged, then put away his knife and stood up, saying to Sanji, do you feel that these enemies are a bit of a shit? Sanji said as he walked forward, is it possible that we have become too strong now? Is it possible that it's mainly because I cut him seriously and injured him, but in fact, your kick has no power at all? What are you talking about, idiot? It was obviously my kick that seriously injured me, okay. I cut it. I kicked it. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.